The young man stares into his own fate and finally understands it. This is it, the last chapter for him. He still remembers the doctor's words, an incurable heart disease and 3 years to live, like a countdown started the moment he heard it. No hope left in him, he felt the next heart attack would be the final one. He quit his job and threw everything into his VRMMO dream, pouring his soul into Broken Balance. Only his illness kept his reflexes dull compared to everyone else. But his insane game knowledge set him apart, turning him into one of the top players, and that same edge let him and his team finally crack a boss everyone swore was unbeatable for 3 straight years. With his strength fading and his final moment staring him down, he wished he could have stolen just a little more time from death. His eyes felt heavy, like sleep was dragging him under. He stared at his friends' messages, panic swelling over his silence, and dug up his last shred of strength to face them. He typed out one last goodbye, thanks for everything, for all of it up to this very moment. As his body crumpled to the ground, he begged for peace in the afterlife, yet darkness didn't come. He snapped his eyes open and froze, waking up in a totally unfamiliar bed, stunned to learn he was still alive. Memories from his past life slammed into his mind all at once, like the past refused to stay buried. From the moment he was born to the very last second, it hit him, everything that really happened. He finally realized it. He'd been reincarnated into a brand new world, and every single memory from his old life came with him. He figured out what was happening and realized the truth. His new identity was being held hostage somewhere out there. He was the fourth son of a struggling noble family out in the countryside, then everyone just shrugged him off, acting like he wasn't even there. He was treated like an unwanted stain, tossed aside by everyone, except his eldest brother, Light, who looked him in the eye and treated him with real kindness when the rest of the family wouldn't lift a finger. He remembered how his family dumped every bad harvest on him for years after his birth, like he was cursed from the moment he arrived. He hadn't been kicked out yet only because he was still a minor. Then his 15th birthday hit, and the coming-of-age ceremony was right there tomorrow. He knew they'd throw him out dressed up as independence, yet somehow it barely even rattled him. As he spun through the village, he finally clocked it. This brand new world looked eerily like Broken Balance Online, right down to the game he'd obsessed over his whole life to master. He clocked it instantly. This world ran on the exact same setup as Broken Balance Online, magic, skills, jobs, and all. On Earth, people chase regular jobs, but here, the roles are pure fantasy, mages with burning power and swordsmen with steel in their hands. Even when the skills hit the mark perfectly, like a swordsman's spinning slash or a mage's magic ball that launches with deadly precision. Just like in the game he used to play, he checked everything and realized the skills here match Broken Balance Online to the letter, the same way he'd already seen with his brothers. His own job was a rookie gig, hands down the weakest class, meant for people who didn't have a real role yet. Even the rookies had a few tricks, and his first move was self-healing. He tried his very first skill, self-cure, an easy recovery spell even rookies could cast, and the moment it worked, he knew he could use it too. Then it hit him. This world runs on the same system as Broken Balance Online. But unlike him, everyone here knew next to nothing about magic or real skills. So yeah, this world didn't play by the game's rules at all. Sure, the self-cure spell was cheap and easy to cast, but he couldn't believe nobody else even tried it. So instead of real healing, people just rubbed random herbs on their injuries. Then they remembered potion making was a thing in BBO, but nobody used it much. He realized that this missing piece might just flip into his biggest advantage. He realized getting kicked out of his noble house might actually be his lucky break, because with everything he knew about BBO, he was sure he could level up fast, forge his own path, and survive this brutal world. Right before Eld's coming-of-age ceremony, his older brother lined in and demanded to know if Eld was truly ready. Eld didn't hesitate. He straight up admitted he was ready. Then he dropped the bomb. He'd scrapped the ceremony entirely, and his brother was left staring in total shock. His brother thought it was all about the cost, but Eld shut that down. Money wasn't the problem at all. He just couldn't stand the ceremony. Normally, when someone hit 15, the village priest would lay a blessing on them during the coming-of-age ritual, and that blessing decided their job, one of the only 2 ways anyone ever switched careers. He remembered this rule like a punch to the gut. Once you got the job, it stuck forever, no matter how you snagged it. And the usual coming-of-age method, easy to do but broken at the core, no choosing your work, just getting the weak, plain results everyone ends up with. Then a second route opened up. He ditched his old job and switched to the cathedral of the royal capital, which handed them way better roles than the basic ones. Eld was dead set on slipping out of the village before the coming-of-age ceremony, and if it meant staying a novice forever, then that was the price he'd pay. After weighing everything, he finally turned to his older brother and told him, "Go tell Dad what I've decided." Even with his nerves screaming, his brother finally gave in and agreed to step up and speak for him. Early in the morning, after months of silence, Eld's father Gelda finally stormed into his room. With a sharp snarl, he demanded Eld get up, throw on his clothes, and be ready to bolt out of the house right now. Geld hurled Eld's things at him, like a slap across the face for daring to reject the ceremony. Then he grinned and crowed that this was the first time Eld had ever done something useful for the family by walking away. Without even a second to think, he barked at Eld to get out, right now. Eld stormed out of the house clutching only a battered sword and 10,000 gills. His family didn't even give him a proper goodbye, and when he realized the money here was basically the same as Earth's yen, he just swallowed the truth and kept going. Right as he was about to leave, his eldest brother Light suddenly showed up, the only one who actually bothered to recognize him. Eld decided to bolt to the nearby town and register as an adventurer, rookie or not. Light snapped that changing jobs first would have been smarter, but Eld fired back. Swordsmanship alone was proof enough, and it showed exactly how determined he was. Light slid him 100,000 gills and warned him to spend it like fire, sparingly, until he could finally stand on his own. Eld grinned, his heart swelling at having a brother who cared so much, though he did appreciate the offer. He waved the money off and said his 10,000 gills would be plenty to tide him over, until he finally landed a job. He swore he'd do his absolute best so he'd never have to lean on it, and Light shot back that if he ever needed that money, it would be waiting. Eld shot out past the village gates with steel in his spine, while his brother stood watching from behind, heart heavy. Then he hit the open road and launched into a brand new journey toward whatever wild future waited beyond the horizon. Eld set his sights on one thing, crushing his way to a city where the Adventurers Guild was waiting. Knowing they could steer him straight to the capital, he had one mission for now: make it there alive. Clutching a battered sword like it was his last lifeline, he prayed you'd make it through the road without a single monster jumping out. As Eld pushed deeper into the forest, a wolf burst out of the shadows and caught him in the blink of an eye. Realizing trouble had been waiting for him, and it showed up way earlier than he ever thought. He braced his whole body, ready to explode into the fight that was coming. Eld clocked the brutal truth about a rookie scout: if he could spot the enemy, then the enemy could spot him right back. Good news, turns out the thing charging at him was just a wolf, one of the weakest monsters in BBO. Still, because this was his first real battle in this world, he couldn't let his guard slip for even a second. As the wolf crashed in, Eld planted his feet and steadied his nerves, flashing back to the raw feel of sword combat from BBO, way more than just game mechanics. It was those battle-tested, perfectly honed skills of his that made all the difference. By locking in his focus and using every observational technique he'd mastered in the game, he steadied himself and charged straight at the beast, and when Eld collided with the wolf, he fought like he'd done it 100 times, pure skill and razor focus. With one brutal, decisive blow, he made it clear: somehow, even a fresh level 1 noob can drop a beast. Snatching a clean hit with brutal precision. His strike triggered a BBO critical hit correction system, one perfect landing, and his sword power shot up like it was boosted by lightning. When he saw that, it clicked, so the world's mechanics were exactly like the game. He decided every technique he'd mastered in BBO would work just as well here. Eld was shocked by how effortlessly his body just slid into motion. He nailed a critical hit on his first try, and as he remembered that only true BBO experts could keep pulling off shots like that, it hit him. His experience wasn't just helpful, it was a huge edge. If this world really ran on the same rules, then his skills could rocket him way farther than anyone expects. Elf started skinning the wolf, her mind racing back to what happened in BBO. People kept ripping this system apart as cruel and pointless, yet it still let players farm materials to forge their gear. Remembering the developer's fix, he went straight for the auto-skinning skill and watched the whole process fall into place, right like it did in the game. Eld pushed the system one more time, and realized the auto-skinning still didn't work the way it did in the game. He fired off the cleanse skill, scrubbing the materials clean to a shine, and realizing it was way more useful than he'd expected. Even though the mechanics looked wildly similar to BBO, he could feel it. This world system had tiny differences hiding under the surface. Eld charged into Ilya through the gates, fueled with determination, and geared up to kick off the next chapter of his journey. Eld slipped into Ilya and scanned the roaring streets packed with merchants and townsfolk, all while hunting for the guild. A man spotted him drifting around and stepped up like he'd been waiting for the moment to strike. An LDAS that he used to lock onto directions. The man snapped to it right away. Eld wasn't just some kid struggling, He was a noble son who'd been kicked out and dared to chase his dreams as an adventurer. He took one look at his crappy gear and snapped that his family must have shipped him out praying he wouldn't make it. With the truth hitting home, Eld leaned in and listened hard as the man started laying out his advice. The man leaned in and told Eld to drop the fancy, formal talk and start speaking like a real person, explaining that adventurers dodged that kind of talk so thieves or enemies couldn't spot the leaders from a mile away. He warned that if Eld kept rolling like that, while others snickered because he didn't even know the basics of adventuring, Eld clamped down on their advice and reshaped his speech. He finally won the man's approval, and then he was directed straight toward the guild. He finally got it, the man was right. Adventurers never put on that fancy, formal voice, not even when they're talking to lords. Eld finally burst into the guild district, staring up at that massive building with sheer determination as he started, ready to finally take his very first real step into the wild life of an adventurer. Eld stepped right into the Ilya branch of the Adventurers Guild, like the next chapter was already waiting for him. He shoved the massive doors open, scanned the room fast, and geared up to start his registration. Inside the guild, Eld leaned over the world map and pored over every detail. He finally clocked it. The capital sat across the sea on a whole other continent. Sure, the trip would be a headache, but it wasn't some impossible distance. Right now he was hunting for a ship headed straight for the capital, and while he waited, he scoured the guild for any requests he could grab. Eld darted to the guild's request board, scanning it for intel on every monster lurking nearby. He was stunned to learn that the wolf-slaying request was only rated C rank. He'd found the third spot out of 6 levels, and with how clueless his game knowledge said wolves were, something about this world's threat ranking screamed wrong. Eld scanned the low-tier petitions and found wild boars, kicking rabbits, and rats that bit, monsters that looked way weaker than wolves, yet somehow still got called monsters. Confused, he finally understood. These monsters weren't in BBO at all, or they showed up so low on the ranks that they were basically nothing. Still stuck on whether this world even has rules, he couldn't stop wondering if the wolf he fought back then was really the very same beast that's now labeled a top-tier nightmare. Eld stormed up to the guild counter to unload the wolf materials he'd hauled in. Right there, Teresa, the receptionist with a bright smile, welcomed him like he belonged, then leaned in and asked what he'd brought with him. Eld admitted he had no idea which monster those fangs came from, saying he was still a beginner, and Teresa told him straight up that worry is totally normal for newcomers. But it drove home how deadly it was to throw hands without even knowing who you're up against. She said monster parts were priced by how useful they were, so you could trade the fangs and you didn't need to be a registered adventurer. Eld slapped the wolf fangs down on the counter. Teresa shot him a stunned look and demanded, "Did you really get these yourself?" She told him straight up, sure, some folks resell materials they bought elsewhere, but if he did it without an official request, the guild would never log it as an achievement, and she warned him not to lie about where it came from. Eltz realized the monster he just crushed was actually a C-rank wolf, and that shock hit hard, so he couldn't stop wondering if it was holding back or just weaker than usual. Teresa broke it down fast. Monsters of the same species don't have that much strength difference, and those fangs he was showing, they looked way too pristine, like they weren't ripped from a just-defeated beast, and that only made her suspicions spike higher. Held pushed for cash first and even asked if they could sell the wolf's fangs, though it wouldn't be counted as an achievement, so Teresa stepped in and paid him 34,000 gils for them, spotless and all. After Guild yanked the 5,000 GIL exam fee for her registration, Eld was left with a cool 29,000 GILs. And he immediately agreed to register, throwing himself into prep, and before the exam even started, Teresa grilled Eld about what he did for work. He finally admitted he was a total rookie, and when she reminded him the exam fee would *not* be refunded if he failed, the pressure hit like a truck. He still signed on the dotted line and got ready to move forward. Eld only learned one thing for sure: the guild wouldn't turn him away, but they'd make him earn his spot with an exam. But every single exam option demanded skills only meant for the job you're locked into. It blocks anyone in the novice class who don't have the skills yet from slipping through under normal conditions. Eld realized the guild exam was going to be brutal, and his only real shot was a straight one-on-one duel with the swordsman examiner. Even though this mission was brutally tough for a newbie like him, crushed by low stats and zero combat, he went for it anyway, fully knowing the worst that could happen was just kissing his exam fee goodbye. Eld didn't pick a team event, he chose the one-on-one battle exam. Teresa took the reins and guided him step by step through the whole process. After preparing, she dragged him straight to the training area, the exact place where the test was about to go down. He steels himself, accepts the challenge, and throws everything he's got at the test, then begs for one thing: no life-crippling injuries. The examiner grabs his sword with total confidence and tells him, "As the pro I am, you'll walk away with only minor injuries," making it crystal clear he's not about to pull any punches. Eld geared up for the exam match, and they even let him use his own sword. He grabbed the wooden one anyway, while the examiner smirked like a sure thing, confident he'd never land a single hit. Eld grabbed a wooden sword, choosing it for its light weight and practical feel when the goal was a non-lethal match. Weapon clutched in his grip, he braced himself as the examiner nodded, confirming they were ready to start. Both fighters were locked in and ready, so the match was about to kick off. The guild receptionist jumped in and acted as the referee. He shot them a quick look, asked if they were ready, then threw the signal, and the exam battle erupted. Both fighters fired off their battle signals, ready to go. With the referee's call snapping through the air, the adventurer's guild admission exam finally kicked off for real. As the fight kicked off, Eld's eyes locked in, and he started breaking down his opponent in real time. He could feel it, this examiner was on another level, far stronger than he'd ever faced. Then he finally clocked it: every sword technique leaves a tiny crack in defense, and his best shot was to slam through that opening before it could close. The moment Eld saw skill hit the field, it clicked. If the examiner refused to use anything but pure brute strength, Eld didn't stand a ghost of a chance. As the fight erupted, the examiner barreled toward him with unstoppable force, aiming to smash him straight in the face. Eld watched his opponent's every move, and the truth hit him hard. A straight block would get him crushed. Sensing the axe drop, he planted a quick, subtle step to dodge, then flipped it, turning the hit into his opening. The examiner ripped in with a brutal guard crush, trying to smash Eld's defenses with raw force, but Eld clocked the gamble instantly. That reckless swing cracked the opening wide, and now he had the perfect counter, cleanly dodging the hit. Eld barely slipped out of the way of that crushing attack. He blinked, realized the examiner left that opening on purpose, and suddenly it all clicked. This wasn't a mistake, it was a test. If Eld couldn't grab that glaring opening and land a decisive critical strike, he didn't deserve to pass the exam. Eld finally smashes in a decisive hit that turns the whole fight. Sent the instructor crashing to the ground. The receptionist slams the brakes on the match, declaring it right there over. Breathing easy, Eld can't help but wonder if he actually passed, because it feels like the instructor went way easier on him during that test. The instructor reels in shock after getting beaten by a total novice with zero skills, so he swallows his pride, nods, and lets the game play out like he's accepting defeat. Eld realizes the man's been acting from start to finish, only pretending all the way to the very end just to keep up appearances. And he humbly thanks the instructor's kindness, convinced he's genuinely a good soul. Eld blasts through the test with razor-sharp sword skills, shocking the instructor, and they press him on where he trained. He insists he's self-taught, but the truth hits different. Those skills were forged from endless hours he spent in a past life, grinding and dissecting every technique inside a game. That whole experience let him sharpen his style again and again, never burning out, never getting hurt, so he came out ridiculously skilled for the real world. Eld drops his ego, then humbly credits his victory to the instructor for holding back. Though he suspects that guy purposely used guard crush to crack the opening, he can't help but grin. Eld hears the instructor's denial and immediately reads between the lines, thinking the man's keeping up appearances on purpose, and honestly, the sheer dedication is downright impressive. Eld crushes the Adventurer's Guild admission exam and officially locks in as a full member. He snatches his guild card and it's official, game on. It's got his name and his starting rank stamped on it. He grips the card, feels his new status hit like a wave, and the receptionist steps in to explain the guild's rules. The receptionist leans in and lays out the Adventurer's Guild rules for Eld, word by word, no mercy. Keep to the 3 big rules: don't ever file false reports, don't spill confidential client info, and always obey the laws of the country where you work. Mess up these rules and you'll face consequences that swing from a suspension to a permanent ban, and if it crosses into criminal territory, the country's laws will go after you. Eld finally gets it. Those 3 core rules are the only ones you're forced to obey, and if you break them, the punishments hit so hard they can even end your life. With a spark of curiosity, he asks about emergencies, because he still remembers the game he used to play, where players had to rush into urgent quests. The receptionist makes it crystal clear. Here, adventurers can't be bullied into taking any job, not even when an emergency is screaming for help. Eld leans in while the receptionist lays out the whole system, every request, every deadline, and every penalty waiting right behind them. Each request comes with a ticking clock, and if you don't report completion before time runs out, it's counted as incomplete. Penalties mean you cough up cold cash, rush the request, and the fine climbs fast, so you better report on time. Right then, Eld finally finishes listening as the guild's rules hit the air. He gets the guidelines copy, and the receptionist shoots him a warning. Even if he finishes the request, if he doesn't report it on time, it'll get stamped as incomplete. Now that everything's crystal clear, Eld decides it's time to dig deeper. He asks the guild whether they've got bestiaries or fighting manuals lying around. Eld demands the guild's bestiary and combat manuals, and the receptionist tells him he can study them inside the guild anytime, but if he wants the info afterward, he's gotta copy it or buy it. Then she picks out the best books for surviving the adventures in that area, and he hands them right to him. Eld starts digging through the monster bestiary scattered around Ilya. He spots the F-rank section packed with brand new creatures he's never laid eyes on, like a kicking rabbit, a biting rat, and a sand mole. As he keeps flipping through, he suddenly spots it. Turns out the F and D ranks are packed with monsters he's never seen before. Eld's jaw drops when the bestiary ranks wolves, scorpions, and even vampire bats as monsters of the sea. Since people usually label them as weak, it's way more shocking when they prove otherwise. He learns the rage wolves are classified as B rank, and that's way higher than he ever expected, so now he's left staring at the truth. Are adventurers in this world just born stronger than everyone else? Eld flips open the A-rank monsters section, and it's totally empty, like someone erased the danger, so he exhales, relieved there's nothing terrifying nearby. Then he flips straight to the adventurer's combat manual, where the moves climb from beginner basics all the way to advanced techniques. The guide teaches you how to swing weapons, cast magic, nail your positioning, survive dungeon dives, and keep your gear in top shape. Eld quickly realizes most of the beginner lessons are stuff he already knows, then he rushes to the advanced combat manual, only to find it still hands him the same basic tips for juggling multiple enemies and surviving their attacks. Rattled and disappointed that the plan didn't spell out any real one-on-one strategies, he suddenly spots a description of a rare phenomenon called *** miracle strike ***, where an attack's power explodes and multiplies out of nowhere, and his focus snaps to it instantly. Eldo realizes even Gillard, the world's strongest adventurer, can land a miracle strike only about 20% of the time, and the shock hits him hard. He suddenly realizes this world's people might not even know the real secret to landing steady critical hits, so he leans on his own know-how and remembers the key move. Relax your hand just a split second when you strike, and that tiny tweak could hand him a massive edge right here. Eld clocks the truth: if adventurers can't even grasp the basics of critical hits, then a measly 20% success rate actually fits, but it still makes him side-eye the bestiary in those manuals, because they feel way too simple to be trustworthy. When she asks if the books actually helped, he flashes a polite smile and thanks Teresa instead of blurting out his doubts, and right before he leaves, he suddenly asks her how to reach the royal capital, catching her completely off guard. Teresa tells Eld he has to race to the coastal city of Minton and catch a ferry to the capital, but the public price is a brutal 3 million gils, since nearly every seat is locked up for guild members and officials. You've got 3 power moves: land a job at a huge company, rub shoulders with nobility and score elite connections, or snag a top-tier spot in a high-ranking guild. Eld shuts those ideas down, choosing to save the cash, while Teresa laughs and teases that he could just swim across the sea. Eld decides to lay low in Ilya for now, making coin, sharpening his skills, and learning the ropes of fighting monsters, before he heads for the coastal city of Miniton, and at the guild he steps up and asks for a beginner-friendly job. Teresa nods and says he can take it even as an F rank, then pushes him to request an E rank so he can handle the next step. Teresa slides Eld an E rank quest with rewards that are way too juicy, straight up saying it's almost as brutal as a D rank, while Eld braces himself, wary of biting off more than he can chew. He shoots it down and demands a normal F rank request instead, until Teresa points out the truth: he already wiped out that instructor. Eld swore it was just luck, like the instructor was going easy on him the whole time. Teresa goes wide-eyed when Eld drops the Miracle Strike card, then he tells her the exam is built to crush beginners, and not a single instructor would ever pull their punches. To her, even a miracle hit that somehow lands by luck is the real proof. Only true experts can do that. Eld's still so sure it's some easy trick anyone could pull off, until he's totally thrown by what's happening, and Teresa, convinced he's the real deal. Quickly, she throws him a fresh request. Teresa grits her teeth and tries to handle that C-rank quest, hunting down lesser wolves. But then it hits him: she might be baiting him into something way too dangerous, so he shuts it down and chooses the safe route. He dodges that junk F-rank rabbit hunting mission and picks his own job instead, then grabs a payday of 1,500 gills for every rabbit he takes down. Teresa swallows his answer and dives right into it, then lays out Eld's request, telling him the whole mission is set for Ilya's second forest, a place where the only real danger is kicking rabbits, so it's about as safe as it gets. Still, she snaps that he needs to prep better, because you can never be too careful. El nods and blurts out, "All right, tell me how to get to the forest," and the relief hits hard, because she finally asked the right way without shoving him into something far too dangerous. Eld storms out of the guild right after his very first request lands in his hands. And then the instructor spots him right away. The man laughs and labels him the strongest novice, teasing, "So you're chasing a mission." Eld just smirks, saying he took a job to hunt kicking rabbits in Ilya's second forest, and he can't help wondering where that overhyped title even came from. Eld tells them he picked the easy job, hunting kicking rabbits in Ilya's second forest, because everyone said it was safe. The instructor nods at his decision and tells him, straight up, to go get it, good luck. And Eld grabs that encouragement like it's fuel, because he knows he'll need every ounce of it ahead of what's coming. Eld strode into the forest like he was stepping into a nightmare. He kept telling himself one thing: don't you dare kick those rabbits just because they look harmless. They're deadly foes, and rookies who underestimate them get wrecked. Eld pushes through the thick trees, eyes blazing as he scans every shadow, until he finally realizes he's reached Ilya's second forest. As Eld pushes deeper into the forest, he spots movement and thinks, is that a rabbit kicking around? But when he gets a closer look, his breath catches because it's staring back like a wolf. From the shadows of the forest, a pack of wolves suddenly erupts into view, casting a creeping suspicion that something far worse is about to happen. Their presence was impossible to ignore. Eld's gut dropped as he realized it wasn't a rabbit out there at all. It was a whole pack of lesser wolves. Eld grips his resolve, baiting the wolf into a head-on charge with a fake confrontation, right up until the very last moment. He snaps out of the way of their attack at the last second, just barely slipping past their snapping fangs. Then he whips around to strike back, and Eld lands a razor-precise hit, dropping one of the wolves. The beast slumps to the ground, lifeless in an instant, while the others stay on edge, circling him carefully like they're afraid to blink. Eld lunges into action, slashing through his first wolf like a spark that just caught fire. And just like that, he threw another strike right after, finishing the fight and taking down the second one. He stays razor-focused, braced and unmoving as those fallen beasts crash down. Eld seized the moment the wolves shattered their formation, snapping back to his rule: when you're surrounded, you isolate them into one-on-one fights. He darts forward and drops another wolf before they can even regroup. With pure determination blazing in his eyes, Eld swings with total conviction, one decisive strike that drops the last wolf and seals the battle for good. Eld's eyes blow wide with pure shock as she freezes there, standing tall and fearless, is a mysterious armored woman gripping her sword like it owns the night, blasting out an overwhelming presence that hit like a wave. Eld can't stop thinking about whether this world has a level-up system, so he tests it. He snatches up a stone and pours raw power into it, and hurls his reinforced stone throw with deadly precision, unleashing it in a blazing burst of glowing energy. Eld hurls a reinforced stone like a cannonball, smashing a boulder clean to pieces with effortless force. Once he realizes he can finally use skills he never had access to before, he just knows this world is running on a level-up system. All smiles after signing up at the guild and leveling up on day one, he turns around and heads back. Eld hurries back to the guild, clutching the dead lesser wolf, muttering, "Is this what you call a real kicking rabbit?" The receptionist gasps in disbelief, staring at the scene like, "Lesser wolves don't belong here. They're not supposed to exist in this forest." Eld grills everyone about the kicking rabbit forest, insisting it's the first time he's ever even heard the thing exist. The receptionist snaps to the truth. He must have slipped into Ilya's second forest, where he cut down a weaker wolf, and Eld brushes it off like it's nothing. He admits that this mistake is why the request fell apart, then quickly pleads, "Can we cancel it?" All while acting clueless inside to hide what he can really do. Caught off guard, the receptionist shrugs it off like it's some dumb mix-up and files Eld's hunt as a lesser wolf job. Eld even fesses up that he wiped out 6, and she practically beams as she hands him a whopping 120,000 gills total, even as you can tell he's not exactly thrilled with her teasing grin. Eld finally exhales after getting paid, realizing beating wolves just paid way better than chasing rabbits ever could. He credits Teresa's kindness for everything, convinced she made sure he landed the best outcome. Grinning with gratitude, he asks if those lesser wolf requests will be back tomorrow, and she fires back with an excited yes. The very next day, Eld storms into a weapons shop. The blacksmith grins at him and lines in, demanding to know what he's hunting for. Eld says he wants a short sword built for his body, then immediately starts poking and testing every option on the table. Eld hunched over the swords in the shop, scrutinizing every blade because he needed something sharp for what came next, and to survive with his weak stats, yet none of the options could satisfy him. He demanded something better, and the shopkeeper immediately shoved a far more expensive sword into his hands, letting Eld feel the weight and test every inch of it. Eld stumbled onto a sword that felt like it was made for him. So he snapped up the thing, sure it could survive any battle without shattering. Even though he felt good about his pick, the moment the dust settled, he realized he was almost out of cash and he'd have to score more money fast. Old stormed back to the guild and learned there were still 32 lesser wolf hunting requests waiting to be claimed. He finally understood he could hunt as many as his heart wanted. Those rewards only matched whatever requests were left, so going past the limit was a total waste. Eld figured knocking out 32 wolf hunts would take him just about 2 hours. So he might as well grab the next request now, so he doesn't waste time later. With his strength ranked at the top of Ubrank in his own mind, he picked a job he could crush with zero doubt, right alongside the wolf hunt. Eld snagged a new job, Hunt Spearmas rank E, and the reward hit hard at 4,000 gills each. The receptionist nodded like it was made for him. He sealed the request, then stormed out with full confidence, only to wrap up the lesser wolf hunt grin and charge straight into Spearmas's elimination for his next mission. Eld burst into Spearmas Forest and instantly knew it was like Teresa described. Visibility was way worse than he expected. Then he spotted a spearmouse, confirmed he was in the right hunting ground, and snapped into action to take down his first target. Right when Eld got close, the spear mouse screamed a piercing warning, and the whole forest erupted with rustling as hunters rushed in. Eld realized that cry wasn't for a few at all, it was a signal summoning dozens more. With the noise swelling around him, he burst forward at full speed, hell-bent on cutting down as many as he could before they managed to team up. Eld instantly clocked it. The spear mice might be tiny, but alone they're nothing. Their sheer numbers crushed all hope. Eld braced himself for the worst. He had nothing but pure skill to carry him, knowing that with this many enemies piling in at once, every fight was basically guaranteed to land on him. With no way out, he barreled straight into the spearmas swarm. Then Eld fought like a storm, ferocious and unrelenting. Eld cut down several spear mice, but their swarm kept crashing in, ripping him with wounds that forced him to grit his teeth through the pain while he was boxed in on all sides, and even though he was outnumbered, he refused to break, leaning on confidence and believing his skill would push him through. He kept slicing through enemy after enemy again and again, and to him, victory came down to relentless persistence and razor-sharp precision. Eld busted out his self-cure and sealed his wounds before the pain could win. He tightly rationed every drop of his limited mana. He forced himself to stay razor-calm, locked in, and exact, because in battle every single call could tip the outcome. Then, right in the middle of the spearmouse swarm, Eld pushed forward with pure grit, mowing them down while planting each step with ruthless timing. His plan was brutally simple: smash the enemies again and again, and only regroup when there was absolutely no other choice. Eld stormed back to the guild dragging a mountain of spearmas corpses, 276 kills in all, and the receptionist nearly fell over staring at his bloodied feet. While Eld double-checked her earlier claim that it was a perfect request for him, he clocked the odds and suspected she was quietly shrinking the danger on purpose. Back at the guild, Eld couldn't help but wonder, did spear mice always swarm like that, in giant, unstoppable packs? The receptionist told me they usually bring people together, but they never do it in the hundreds. As she sifted through the materials, one strange item caught her eye, and it traced back to a military spear mouse, meaning Eld had likely tangled with something way more deadly than he ever realized. The receptionist snapped that military spear mice were nothing like the regular ones. These monsters get tagged as C rank, not the lowly E rank. She told them straight up that taking them on by herself was basically suicide, yet their stuff could still fetch a fortune. Still, Eld couldn't tally those spear mice for his original deal, and now everything got messy, so he snapped into action and decided to sell every military spear mouse he'd wiped out, because they were top-tier C-rank monsters. The guild dangled a jaw-dropping 20,000 gold for every single kill. And just like that, a massive reward hit his hands, leaving him speechless at the insane payout. Eld got handed a platinum coin worth a mind-blowing 1 million gills as his reward. The guild warned him, don't show it in the city. Thieves will come hunting the moment word gets out. They told him the area was safe, then basically dared him to handle anything that tried to pop up. Eld clutched his hard-earned reward, ready to sprint for the royal capital, on a mission to level up and become a real top-tier adventurer. The guild mourned the loss of such a powerful adventurer, but he swore he'd come back someday on his own terms. Just as Eld geared up to bolt out the door, the guild receptionist lunged forward and cut him off in a hurry. He bowed low, apologizing as he confessed he lied about that kicking rabbit request. She owned up to her mistake, and Eld stayed cool, telling her not to fret, just warning her not to pull the same deception on anyone ever again. Eld snapped a promise to the receptionist, telling her he didn't want anyone to carry a grudge because of her. Then he said it right out loud. She flashed him a warm smile and nodded right away, feeling the tight knot in her chest finally loosen. Eld tore himself away at the city gates and strode forward, pure determination driving every step. He stared out at the far-off horizon and fixed his goal on his next stop, the port town. Eld rolled into Port Town Minneton, a buzzing coastal city where the streets never stopped roaring with life. Skyscrapers and massive ships loomed over the harbor, and then, right on cue, everything screamed that his next journey was about to begin. Eld tore through the port town of Minneton, grilling everyone about ferry tickets to the royal capital, until he finally learned the Maxia company sold them, and the price was an absolute fortune. About 3 million. Even with that crushing price tag staring him down, he dug in and pushed forward anyway. Eld stormed up to the Grand Maxia headquarters, staring in shock at how colossal it was. Rushing up to the ferry counter for the royal capital, he demanded passage. Then the clerk snapped back, asking whether he had a letter of introduction. When he said no, everything snapped into a mess. Eldo leaned in and demanded 3 million gills for a ferry ticket to the royal capital, and he didn't even flinch. He pulled out the exact amount on the spot. Eld threw the clerk off for a second, because they'd mistaken him for some big-shot adventurer, yet he just laughed it off and swore he was nobody, and the clerk, wowed, immediately started setting up his boarding. Eld begged to get aboard ASAP, and the clerk snapped that the next ship would shove off in just half an hour. Eld said yes on the spot, and before the grand vessel even finished gearing up to sail, everything was thrown together at once. On the ship, Eld stared at the sea and counted down 3 hours until the royal capital, and then he leaned against the railing. A sharp buzzing ripped through the air, and his eyes locked onto something strange racing toward him. Eld spotted a blazing water travel stone, an ancient relic that lets you steer the ship through the waves. Over there, a cluster of women wrestled with alchemy ingredients, grinding and mixing again and again, yet every time they failed, even though they followed the recipe to the letter. As Eld watched them closely, he kept thinking mixing was the key and it couldn't be skipped. Eld overheard the women fighting their alchemy, then he dropped the pale green spirit medicine into the conversation. Stunned, they fired back, questioning every word he just said, even as he wondered if he'd gotten it right. Eld spoke again, hands steady and voice booming with confidence, while everyone stared at him in stunned disbelief, wondering if he really had the right answer after all. Stunned by Eld's insane knowledge, the women swallowed hard and nervously blurted out if he really knew how to mix the medicine. Eld could tell he was chasing a miracle, and he straight up admitted he knew exactly how to mix the medicine, then offered to do it himself. The woman, desperate for a potion, promised she'd pay whatever price he demanded. Eld put her through the ultimate test, and then demanded a staggering 10 million gills. She took it instantly, and he just stood there, shocked by how insanely wealthy she had to be. 10 minutes later, Eld slammed the last ingredient in and finished mixing the potion. Done. The noblewoman snatched it with a grateful gasp, finally feeling her luck turn as she got exactly what she needed. Eld felt a rush of relief because he pulled it off with zero problems, but then he couldn't shake the burning question, who was this mysterious woman really? Eld brewed the potion with a rare sacred tree leaf, a prize so valuable it made heads turn, and when the noblewoman saw it work, she rewarded him handsomely for his effort. Even more than agreed, she checked his work, realized it was enough for 2 bottles, and stopped him from adding more money. Then she slid him a special token as thanks. Eld got a seal of appreciation from the Maxia company, a bold symbol of trust that proves he's dependable whenever it's shown in their stores or across the capital. Blindsided by how much that gesture mattered, he snapped, "Why would you do that?" But the woman lined in and reassured him, because as the company's chairman, it only made sense for her to hand that kind of recognition to someone she truly trusted. She leaned in and said her name was Mina Maxia, the chairman of the Maxia company, the one running the ship Eld they were riding. Eld nearly fell out of her seat when the Maxia company's chairman himself praised her to her face, and in that moment, she understood exactly how vital she really was. He threw his name out there, then they shared one last goodbye before parting ways. They both clung to the same promise, hoped that someday they'd meet again. On the ship, Eld spotted sudden movement in the water below. He pointed it out and then it hit. something they couldn't name was barreling toward them at terrifying speed. The ship cut across the sea with unstoppable steady speed. Eld pointed out the vessel was built to shrug off monster attacks, but he still warned them to stay sharp. Then Mina told her maid to check it, and she obeyed at once. Then the crew raised their telescopes, scanning the waters, and one of them snapped with shock the moment he saw what was out there. The crew saw a colossal sea dragon heave up out of the waves and barrel straight for their ship, and panic erupted the moment they realized this monster was way off course, over 500 kilometers from where it should have been, leaving everyone stunned and totally unready for the sudden onslaught. Eld sized up the threat and realized the sea dragon was on a whole other level, using its spear-like arms to stab enemies straight through. He knew one rookie took a single blow, and it would end them immediately. Meanwhile, Mina snapped into action. She rallied the crew, shouted for every fighter to get there fast, and drove the others to safety inside. Eld shot out the warning. This ship wasn't built to survive a monster like that, and then he spotted it. The sea dragon locked onto the mast like it was going straight for the heart of the ship. If the mast snapped, that water-traveling stone would vanish, and with it, the ship would go under fast because there's no backup plan. Eld slammed the truth into place. There was only one option left: face the threat head-on. Elda herded the passengers together and demanded, "Who here can fire off long-range attacks?" A tight little crew surged forward, 3 mages blazing with power and 2 archers ready to unleash. Even with the odds stacked against them, Eld clenched their resolve and fought tooth and nail with whatever they had to stop the threat. Eld demanded someone stand guard and shield the mast from the sea dragon's blows, but not a single person dared to step up. Mina broke the news. It was an A-rank monster, the kind people almost never managed to beat. Seeing how bad it was, Eld stepped up and took the responsibility on his own shoulders. Eld braced himself at the very edge of the ship, ready for whatever came next, watching as the sea dragon stormed closer. As it crept closer, he snapped to signal the others, and the archers and mages instantly tensed up, ready to unleash everything. The moment the beast slid into range, the archers loosed their arrows, and the mages screamed out spells strong enough to shake the whole battlefield. Plunging straight into the sea dragon's face, they crashed head-on and explosions blasted through the waves, rattling everything in sight. Smoke billowed as the creature got swallowed by their combined assault, and the group held their breath, desperate to see what their strike would do. The sea dragon burst out of the smoke, and it looked totally unshattered. They sent the group into a panic until it hit them. Their worst fears were wrong, and the attacks had failed. Eld spotted the damage right away, pushed them to keep going, and swore their hits were working, because the monster was finally starting to weaken. The crew kept hammering in relentless waves, certain that this non-stop pressure would finally crack the sea dragon and bring it down. Eld finally realized the real issue had nothing to do with their damage output. As the battle raged, the sea dragon thrashed beneath the waves, ripping the sea into a massive whirlpool, and suddenly they saw the real danger waiting for them. The sea dragon blasted out of the ocean with sheer brutality, towering over the ship and soaking everything in its wake. Eld steadied his stance, eyes locked in with razor focus, bracing his body as the monster's next hit came crashing in. Eld snapped his strike at just the right moment, right as the opening hit. The sea dragon's ferocious attack explodes, focusing all his power into one sharp, perfectly timed counter. With a brutal swing, he slammed out a game-changing counter that snapped the advantage back his way. Ramming straight into the beast's brutal power, no room to breathe. And boom, he hits the world with a massive, unforgettable impact. Eld snapped the sea dragon's mask right out of the way and sent it flying aside. He unleashed a spear-arm strike and landed a razor-sharp counter that turned the tide. The sheer force of his technique stunned everyone watching, because it showed that even a rookie can shove back a monster like that if they've got the right skill. The whole crew freezes in shock as Eld snaps his blade up and blocks the sea dragon's brutal strike. Then he presses the question in the air: who is he really? Eld stays razor-focused, eyes locked on the truth. His life hangs by a thread. But then he clocks the dragon's pattern. Every attack hits the same rhythm, and once he keeps firing off his critical counter, he turns all those brutal spear-arm strikes into harmless blurs. Mina's command snaps the mages back into action, and they slam the assault forward without wasting a second. Bombarding the sea dragon non-stop with spells, explosions rip through the beast with every hit. But it glares back with furious, glowing eyes, refusing to back down for even a second. A sea dragon erupts from the waves, slamming its spear-like arms straight onto the ship's deck, right where the adventurers are braced and ready. Eld storms ahead, determination blazing, eyes locked on the beast as he braces to slam into its brutal attack head-on. Eld slammed straight into the sea dragon and jammed one of its massive spear arms, but the beast swung a second arm instantly, knocking him into a full-on, desperate defense. Under crushing pressure, he barely dodges a blade that would have ended him. Then it hits hard. Fighting two attacks at once is more than his body can take. Relieved he dodged it, he realizes, too late, that the hit was dangerously close. Eld honed his reflexes down to the millisecond, fully aware that one slip in timing or angle would turn his counterattacks into a guaranteed wipeout. His focus sharpens to a blade as he shoves that thought out of his mind. He pushed to end the fight before the mask gets smashed, and the sea dragon took wave after wave of non-stop punishment. Its body reeled from the brutal blows, and Eldested surged forward. Certain victory was right there as the creature's strength started to slip. The sea dragon's footing crumbled out of nowhere, and its strike snapped toward the passengers. Eld clocked it instantly. But the attack was already screaming toward Mina and her crew. Right as it was about to slam into them, a fighter barreled in to take the hit, and Mina froze, terrified and completely shell-shocked. Eld snapped his arm up and blocked the redirected strike with pure force, planting himself like a wall in front of Mina and the others. His razor-sharp defense stunned the whole crowd, Mina especially, watching him like he'd just saved her life. With a calm, iron certainty, Eld told them that guarding them was just the mission he came to fulfill. Eld's eyes burned with determination as he declared, "The battle's almost over," and pushed everyone to finish the fight. The mages and archers squared their shoulders and answered with unshakable resolve. They tightened their grips on spells and arrows, lining up the final blow for the sea dragon. The sea dragon crashed beside the ship and at last defeated. Relief and wild joy erupted across the passengers and crew as they cheered for making it out alive, shouting thanks to everyone who fought, especially Eld, the mysterious, ruthless swordsman who carved a path to victory. While the crew hunted him down to thank him, Eld quietly slipped out of the crowd like a ghost. Trying not to draw eyes from the guild staff or nobles, he slipped to a hidden corner of the ship, finally exhaled, and let the tension drain out of him. Eld admitted he didn't want to draw attention, because the capital already had something huge waiting for him. Mina flashed a smile, clocking his stance, then reminded him that every move he made that day, yes, including the one that spared her, had saved lives. Mina locked eyes with pure resolve and swore, by her own name, that she'd pay back every last debt she owed. Eld flashed a calm smile and told him, "Don't worry, I'll be right here waiting." As soon as their words hit the air, the ship surged out onto the open sea, gliding forward with unstoppable steadiness. As Eld's ship sailed on in perfect safety, cloaked watchers lined the shore, and one of them went wide-eyed when he learned the sea dragon had finally been crushed. But then someone scoffed it off as a tiny detour. He flashed a confident grin and swore that for their crew, the Garden of Despair, this was just the start. Elds gripped the ship's railing and watched the sails surge forward, dragging them closer and closer to their destination. The crew blared they were closing in on the royal capital, urging everyone to brace for disembarkation, and then the city finally burst into view beyond the cliffs. Eld stared it down with pure determination, convinced, this time, he'd finally reached his destination. As the ship bore down on the royal capital's towering gates, Eld's eye locked onto the city ahead, jaw set and purpose blazing in his chest. This was it, the place where he'd finally undergo his job change and step into becoming a sage. Eld burst into the capital and locked onto the old cathedral ahead, its walls scarred with a towering portrait of Jaeus, the god of jobs. Even if the place looked dead and empty, he knew one truth: nothing mattered unless the cathedral of Jaeus was still standing. He could switch jobs, so with pure grit, he locked in and knew this was the place he'd been hunting for. Eld weighed the idea of slipping into the cathedral ruins, quiet, stealthy, and full of danger, handing it over as the go-to spot for job changes. Mina let him in on it. That perfect building he'd been staring down was nothing but a dead, abandoned old church, while the real royal capital cathedral was still standing somewhere else, fully alive and kept in order. Eld finally barreled into the royal capital's cathedral, an enormous, jaw-dropping fortress of stone towering over everything, and he immediately clocked something off. This cathedral didn't have the portrait of Jaeus, the god of jobs, like the other ruins he'd seen, and doubt hit hard as he wondered if real job changes could even happen here. Eld shot Mina a question: was it really okay to slip into the ruins without permission? And Mina nodded, saying yes. She told him they could be taken in freely, but warned that there was a real chance they'd end up getting forced into a band at the hideout. Eld admitted he didn't want to tempt fate too hard, even as Mina shrugged and said that if any bandits were around, they probably wouldn't even be much trouble for him. Mina's jaw dropped when she learned Eld was only rank F, so she swore she'd pull strings with her guild to boost his rank right away, insisting he didn't look like someone who was green at all. Eld refused outright, snapping that a high rank meant nothing without real experience. After his earlier fight, he realized it with full certainty. Turns out people in this world can pull off the very same skills as in BBO. Eld stared at his situation, realizing the folks here could pull off BBO-style skills, but their combat skills were way too weak to back it up. Skills alone didn't cut it, stats mattered just as much. He admitted that even if the sea dragon just stood there for hours, his low attack power still wouldn't have been enough to bring it down. Realizing he wasn't ready yet, the rookie decided to hold off on climbing to a higher rank for now. Eld geared up to slip into the cathedral ruins, and he thanked Mina for the intel. She warned him to stay sharp and told him to come back to her for help anytime. The moment the ship docked, Eld grinned, lined in, and promised her he'd keep it in mind. Mina flashed a teasing gesture as the crew spilled onto the port, and back on the ship everyone was left staring, where the mysterious swordsman had vanished to, and whether he'd ever been real at all. Eld burst into the bustling royal capital, jaw dropping at every turn. He drank in the electric buzz of the city, way louder than the small towns he'd seen before. Later on in an inn, he collapsed into a seat, caught his breath, and plotted his next move. He was ready to switch jobs right away, but he froze, because the ruins might be crawling with bandits, and traveling in daylight would make him easy prey. Eld figured the perfect time to slip into the ruins was around 3 a.m., when everyone's guard was down and no one was watching. He decided to save every ounce of energy for later, then crashed onto the bed and planned to rest up, just for a while. Eld realized he'd gone hungry ever since boarding the ship, and his stomach finally roared back. Figuring he had a little time to burn, he bolted out of the inn to hunt down something to eat. He sprinted to a restaurant named Salama to snag a meal before nightfall hit. Eld strode through the bustling streets, weaving past loudmouth men who guzzled drinks and erupted in wild laughter. He finally slammed to a stop right outside a loud, rowdy bar. Even though it didn't look like the safest spot, he shrugged and went in for a meal, right into a lively, buzzing place where the staff welcomed him with open arms. In the packed restaurant, Eld got handed the news that he'd have to share a table, so he nodded, slid into the seat, and got ready to make it work. He stole a glance at the woman ahead of him, and that food looked so mouthwatering, it practically begged him to take a bite. So he just ordered the exact same dish, no hesitation at all, and the waitress grinned, confirmed it as that cheeky burger, then vanished to cook it up. Eld dug into his meal, loving every bite, when boom, somewhere nearby, a massive commotion suddenly erupted. A scruffy eye-patch man burst into the restaurant, roaring at the staff, and demanded to know why his party's seats weren't reserved. And then he yelled he was a card holder. Boom, his presence snapped everyone's attention to him like a magnet. The guy snapped at the waitress, demanding special treatment, but she shut him down cold, no reservations, and he'd have to wait until his party showed up, so he blew up, yelling that there weren't any empty seats. Then his face split into a sly grin as the meaning clicked. Someone was definitely going to have to give up their seat. Heavy boots thudded as he pushed deeper into the restaurant, mission blazing clear, while everyone else watched with tight, nervous eyes. The one-eyed man with the eye patch loomed over the protagonist, eyes blazing with menace, and barked, "Get up right now," before shoving him to leave his seat. Despite the provocation, the protagonist stayed stone calm, stood his ground, and locked eyes with him. No fear, just steel. The hero only let out a heavy sigh, like the situation was choking him, and while the brute stormed up and barked for an answer, the protagonist stayed icy calm, watching him with pure indifference. The eye-patch man keeps jabbing for Eld to stand up right now, shouting that he has to get moving, while Eld stays icy calm and tells him to wait, like everyone else, because his gut screams this isn't a chat, it's a trap. And without a shred of worry, he goes right back to eating, telling him to cool off and slow down. Els keeps chewing like nothing's wrong, savoring every bite without a hint of nerves, convinced he'll be done before that eye-patch guy and his crew ever show up. With a calm smile, he keeps praising the food, but the guy in front of him snaps, rage swelling fast as humiliation crashes over him. He braces to strike Eld, fury burning, because he can't stand being brushed off. The one-eyed swordsman hoisted his blade over his head, gearing up to slam it down on Eld, who just sat there at the table, totally calm. Eld watched him with zero fear, clocking just how reckless and wildly unskilled his opponent really was. The man slammed his blade downward with pure brute force, and Eld clocked every flaw. His stance was wrecked, his technique worse. Then the eye-patch man surged forward and thrust his sword straight at Eld, trying to end him in a rage-fueled rush to kill. Eld snapped his blade up and slammed it into the attacker's strike with brutal ease, and the moment steel screamed together, the whole attack stalled, leaving the attacker reeling. He couldn't believe his strike got shut down so easily, and as the fight caught the whole tavern's attention, Everyone stared in stunned silence at Eld calmly, holding his ground against that reckless assault. Eld snapped into action and shut down the attack with nothing but a fork, flicking it with razor-precise control, so effortless it was like the strike never even landed, while the eye-patched man just froze, staring in pure disbelief. His confidence crumbled the second he realized his strike got shut down by something as simple as an eating utensil, and the sight left him frozen, staring like he couldn't wrap his head around Eld's cold, unstoppable skill. Eld snapped into action, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted it with razor-precise control. The thug tried to wrench free, but panic hit hard, pain detonated through his arm, and he couldn't move. Eld snapped back that it was all self-defense, and he made sure to drill one fact in: he'd attacked first. Eld poured power into the skill and tightened his grip like it could crush the world. Proving he could snap the man's arm in a heartbeat if he wanted, his calm eyes said it all, while the thug stared back in pure terror. Elder handled the thug like it was nothing. He twisted the guy's arm, pinned him where he stood, and lit him up for pulling a weapon in a bar, making it clear he was only lucky it never escalated. The thug, drenched in sweat and seething with fury, snapped back in total disbelief. Even with Eld staying cool and dismissive, it screamed one thing: he wasn't just watching the chaos, he was the one really in control. That thug, desperate and seething, thumped his chest, bragging about his big company power, then vowed he'd tear Eld's whole life apart. Eld stayed rock steady, totally unshaken by the man's intimidation, with zero fear showing on his face. Eld stared at that bronze card and demanded answers, because what the heck was it supposed to mean? They told him this kind of card was handed out by a company to adventurers they officially recognized, basically, a badge of fame, and it instantly dragged him back to the card Mina gave him, because it looked shockingly the same. The thug barked out an arrogant laugh, bragging that Zinni's company would never forgive Eld for crossing him. Then Eld stayed dead calm, reached into his pocket, and pulled out his own card to prove it. The thug's whole body went stiff with disbelief when he realized this wasn't just some ordinary car. Still that exact bronze card he'd been waving around like he owned the world. The thug froze in full shock when he realized Eld's card wasn't bronze, it was gold, the kind only the famous Maxia company would hand out. The bombshell dropped and the whole bar froze, every eye snapping to the source. Eld stared at the card, squinting like, is this really that huge? While everyone else insisted it was, and they reminded him how he'd once stopped a blade with nothing but a fork. The eye-patch man crumpled to his knees, begging for his life and promising up everything he owned, while the protagonist just stared in stunned confusion, because that single card he flipped somehow hit with an insane, crushing weight. Whispers ripple through the crowd, because if he's really got the Maxia company's gold card, there's no way he's just a normal guy, and people are staring like they've never seen him in their lives. But let's be real, anyone with that kind of status isn't a nobody, and everyone else is quick to point out the same thing. If you're dumb enough to start a fight with someone holding a gold card, you're basically signing your doom. The moment he clocks how badly things have spiraled, his stomach drops, so he shoves his car out of the way and puts it aside. Suddenly the guards crash into the room, barking, "Who started this chaos?" To everyone's shock, the eye-patch man panics, blurts out that he's the attacker, and begs them to arrest him. Right now, take him straight to jail, while the protagonist stands there stunned, scratching his head like, who in the world even called the guards in the first place? The guards grabbed the eye-patch-wearing man, hauled him away, and left him behind. He leaves the protagonist staring like, wow, I really got everyone's attention. Then he hurries to pay his bill and slips out fast, trying to disappear before anyone notices. Right then, a grateful woman rushes up to him and spills out her heartfelt thanks. He leans in and tells her it's nothing, even though the truth hits him inside. He only did it to protect himself, but hey, getting her thanks still gives him a little rush. After he tore himself away from the place, he's shocked they hand him the meal for free and toss in a coupon for his next visit too. After he finished his meal, the protagonist shot up with a grin. There was still time left to make it count. He heads back through the city streets, burning to finally shut his body down, waiting for the exact moment he's supposed to act. The young man is wide awake in bed, staring into the dark like it's about to confess something. He tossed and turned all night, buzzing with excitement about finally leaving his novice class behind. Even though he couldn't really settle, he forced his body to rest all night, and now he's packed with energy. Eyes locked with grit, he springs up, slaps on his gear, and gets ready to take on whatever's coming. He steps out onto the quiet streets, and the whole world suddenly feels hushed. The whole town lay frozen under the night sky, and once he checked that everything was still and silent. He lifts his hand to his face, snaps a skill on, and his expression turns razor-focused in an instant. His eyes blaze, the second night vision kicks in, turning the crushing darkness into sharp, crystal-clear sight. Empty streets stretch out in sharp, chilling detail, and the buildings loom like they're daring him to look closer. Only a tiny handful can pull off this kind of power. He strides through the silent town like he owns the night. He climbed higher and higher until he could look down at the whole city beneath the starry sky. He catches faint voices in the air and spots movement by a battered little church, so he ducks behind the wall and watches every detail like his life depends on it. Feeling the dwellers are still awake, he tightens his grip on the weapon, bracing for anything, praying he can dodge a fight before it even starts. He slips into the quiet church, and the silence hits him like a warning. And he heard his voices rising from below, then it clicked. Some churches keep secret job change chambers buried underground, so he might. He pushes through the inner halls, barrels down the stairs, and stops cold in front of a sealed basement door. Down in the basement, he spots a bunch of men huddled together, and the moment he sees it, he knows this mess is way bigger than he thought. The door's locked tight, so cracking in straight on is a risky move. Staring at the building from the outside, he realizes barging in would only spark trouble. He spots a well by the church, and the memory hits. Those wells are never just water, they're usually secret doorways. With a confident glare, he yanks the rope and climbs down into the dark, using it like a stealthy shortcut straight to the basement. He finally slips into the hidden chamber tied to the well, and there, right in front of him, is a rock-solid wooden door. Sure, this way will get him in. He nudges the door open with steady hands, poised to charge forward the moment it gives. He realizes charging in head-on would blow his cover, so he whips up a distraction to draw the heat away. He yanks his sword free, slams it into the door with a thunderous clang, and uses that chaos to pull everyone's eyes away from where he's standing. That brutal slam hits so loud it snaps every man inside to attention, yanking their focus away instantly. He snatches the opening, rockets up the well, and wastes zero time. Then he dives back down and slams a landing skill to soak every bit of impact. He lands hard on his feet, straightens his stance, and locks onto the door up ahead, ready to slip back into the shadows and keep the infiltration going. Shouts ripped through the air as everyone scrambled to lock down the area. But down at the bottom of that well, he stays unnervingly calm, like he's convinced it's safe, and he's ready to push forward. He slips through the door and bam, lands in a storage room packed with crates and supplies stacked to the ceiling. He cracks open the crate and boom, inside are packets of drugs. He clocked the contraband instantly, knowing it was tied to that old organization that unleashed chaos everywhere. He realizes this has to be the group's cash source, and for a second he debates smashing it, but then he stops himself, knowing it's not the right moment to strike. The moment he swings the door open, he slams straight into a guard's face, right there, totally unplanned. With a jolt, the man blurts out a furious shout, and the whole place snaps to attention. Then, moments later, a wave of enemies barrels down the corridor, all realizing an intruder has slipped through. The men scream for his death and rush him headfirst, no second thoughts, because they finally feel the danger closing in. He barrels down the hallway, desperate to lose them, and sprints straight to the job change room before anything else can go wrong. He rockets down the corridor, spots a door with a familiar portrait, and bolts inside, then slams it shut behind him. In the chamber, a calm goddess statue waits, and one look is enough to know he's finally hit the job change room. Relief crashes through him the moment he checks. This room is exactly the spot where his job change can happen. When the pursuers slammed closer, he shoved a shelf into the entrance in a panic, blocking their way long enough to steal himself precious seconds. Right in front of the statue, he steels himself for the job change ritual, because here, with the right blessing and chant, you can claim any profession you want. He remembers the legendary class master who mastered every kind of magic, healing arts, and devastating attacks alike. It was a job so overpowered it wrecked the game's balance, and it sat above every other profession like it owned the rules. He grips the glowing orb, calls for the sage's job, and the light floods him whole, swallowing every gap in the dark. Radiant energy envelops his body as the ritual finally hits, and that's when his transformation kicks off. As the glow starts to die out, he stares at his hand in pure shock, and a power he's never felt before surges through him. Because this isn't some game trick, it's real, and he finally understands what it's like to truly change jobs. Now transformed, he rips open the air with a crushing, game-changing spell. He tore through the wall like it was nothing, and the moment he hit open space, dust and rubble exploded everywhere. Clashing footsteps echo nearby, and panicked enemies sprint over, only to realize he's slipped into the next warehouse. With his brand new powers humming in his veins, he blasts a spell that freezes him in midair, and then rockets upward, charging straight out of the well. Bursting out into the open, he gazes down at the church grounds, free at last after slipping out of that underground chamber. Under the moon's glow, he hangs above the chaos, and as the confused men scour below, they never spot him, because his mission is already done. He spins away from the church, slips out with speed and calm, and braces to push straight ahead. Right when he's about to head out, a blade rockets in out of nowhere, slashing straight for him. It slips past by a hair and shock jolts through him. Only then a figure stepped out, shocked by his reflexes, like it was ready to challenge him head-on. A hooded man steps in, voice smooth and deadly, praising his infiltration and the diversion like it was all part of the plan. The young man spots the crest on his chest, and the truth hits hard. He's tied to the terrifying organization everyone fears, the Garden of Despair. The Garden of Despair finally pulls back the curtain, a shadowy org wrapped in mystery, where their real plan and structure stay totally hidden, and all that's crystal clear is this: they're out to wipe out human society. Among all the evil crews out there, they're the ones everyone fears most, because they don't just threaten the world, they terrify it. The cloaked man demands how he even got their name, pointing out that secrets like the Sea Dragon incident are buried deep, so deep only the most protected cases could stay hidden. The young man tries to play it cool to fish for answers, but the moment he presses, he hits a nerve and locks in the truth. Yeah, they really were involved. The cloaked man digs up old reports about a swordsman with a battered blade who saved a ship from sinking, and his gut screams it was him. Then he leans in and makes a jaw-dropping offer. They didn't try to stop him, they swept him up with an offer: join their organization instead of fighting them. He steps forward and introduces himself as Brassus, the ruthless leader of the Garden of Despair. And it dangles wealth, women, and every dream you can name, if you'll just stay loyal. Still on edge, the young man figures out that acting like he agrees might be his safest escape route, letting him dig into their real motives, even while he's stuck at his low level right now. He shuts the offer down on the spot, flat out saying he wants nothing to do with that organization. Brazy pushes harder, dangling cold cash and the raw rush of taking lives. But the moment he lunged forward, his words went cold, and his sudden attack hit like a storm. Brazy slings another blade at him with surgical deadliness. Startled, he whips around and reacts right at the last second. Ducking that projectile at the last second, he barely scraped through, seconds from a fatal hit. He steadies himself after the dodge and instantly clocks it. The first strike was a decoy. With grit in his eyes, he declares, "I've never killed before," then steps forward anyway, ready to begin this fight. He barrels forward, ready to slam in a strike, while Brazy's grin widens with menace, revealing Claude's weapons, like this battle can't come fast enough. They collide hard, steel and claws snapping together in a non-stop storm of lightning strikes. Sparks burst as the young man snaps aside a relentless storm of attacks, pressing forward with razor-sharp precision as Brazy's counters come at him like punches. Their fight kept escalating with every clash, steel slammed into steel, blades grinding as they strained against each other, refusing to give an inch. Brazy sneers at the weight of his opponent's sword, twists his grin into mockery, and clamps the clash in place like he owns the moment. He swings in for another clash, but before he can even breathe, the enemy crushes him, and he's shoved back hard, even with both hands locked on his sword. Reeling from his opponent's brutal strength, he realizes, just from sheer power alone, that this man is in a leg he shouldn't even be able to face. Brazy lets out a wild, maniacal laugh, soaking up the crowd's reaction, and he throws his arms wide like he's daring the world to deny his power. He swears that skill won't matter, no matter how ruthless or talented his opponent is. Death is closing in fast, so this young man races to gather strength and bursts out with a spell before it's too late. Hurling chunks of the earth forward in a non-stop barrage, then the ground rips open and shatters violently as the bullets scream toward Brazos. He's caught off guard, then Brazos surges forward, charging straight ahead. He rockets out of the way with one sudden leap, then breaks into a laugh as it all clicks. Now he knows why that kid's blade felt so flimsy, because his opponent wasn't a fighter at all, he was a mage the whole time. He barrels ahead, clenching his sword like it's the only thing keeping him standing. And then boom, he unleashed a straight, no-warning strike. The enemy braces for impact, and their blades slam together, each one straining to outmuscle the other in brutal close-quarters combat. In the heat of their clash, the young man snaps into a new strategy and fires magic straight at Brazos' leg. Brazos gets caught off guard, and right when the attack's already coming, he realizes the headshot was just a decoy. It left him trapped, frozen in shock by the wild, unexpected move. Brazy thrashes as sticky bonds yank his legs in place, and he can't move a single inch. Then the young man snaps it into focus. It was a trap spell, a sticky bomb, disguised as the clay bullet he'd fired earlier. In the cover of night, he slipped in so quietly that even his enemy couldn't spot the shift until it was already way too late. Brazy is fighting for his life. Yanking hard at the sticky stuff that pinned him in place, he spat curses through clenched teeth. Right in the middle of everything, he snaps to a stop as his opponent calmly lifts a glowing magic circle and aims a crushing spell straight at him, while the young man grins and pours magic into his fingertip. Then Brass's panic explodes into rage as he screams, finally realizing the momentum has fully flipped and he's been outplayed. The young man hurls a flame bomb, boom, smacking Brassy right on target and swallowing him in a roar of raging fire. He erupts in a raw scream as flames swallow his body whole, and he can't move, can't fight back at all. The protagonist stands there with ice in his eyes as his enemy screams and turns to ash. Keeping his hand raised, his gaze was ice-cold and unyielding, showing zero hesitation. Brazil's burned arm starts transforming into a moan. A claw scraped and buried under a shower of rocks. The protagonist is left reeling in shock as the enemy charges forward like a storm, cracking the earth with raw, brutal force, and blasting open a gigantic crater of destruction around it. A monstrous creature bursts out of the dark like it's been hunting your nightmares, its body warped by a forbidden drug, glowing with pure menace. The young man hangs back from above, stone calm and locked in, studying the enemy like a chess master before he strikes. The enemy swallows a drug and gets ripped into a monstrous form, trading his mind and his humanity for nothing but brutal, raw power. Sensing the deadly organization it came from, the young man clenches his jaw and readies his magic, realizing he'd better go all out because without full power he didn't stand a chance. The young man flings out a ruthless, power-packed spell. He conjured a colossal fiery arrow and blasted it forward like a weapon meant to tear everything apart. As the battlefield ignites, the transformed monster lunges in and clamps onto the blazing arrow. He tries to fight off its power, but the instant it takes hold, violent flames erupt and crush his resistance. The young man snaps into action and blasts a follow-up attack. 5 blazing arrows ignite in the air at once. Flaming projectiles tore from the sky, hammering the transformed monster non-stop until it got drowned under raw, relentless force. A brutal burst of fire scorches the battlefield, blasting a gigantic crater right where the enemy used to stand. The young man watches the wreckage unfold in eerie silence, then launches himself out of there in a single burst, slipping off the battlefield beneath the blazing night sky, where everything felt like it could explode at any second. The very next day, the young man sinks into silence in his room, staring at the walls as the fight replays in his head. Breathing out in relief, he watched the night's battle end, and no more attacks ever came. He admits he has to level up fast, so next time enemies like that show up again, he's ready to take them on. Striding through town, eyes sharp and steps steady, the young man's mind snaps to one truth: a sage lives or dies by his gear. He remembers how staves jack up magic power, turning a fight from possible to unstoppable. Thinking back to his clash with the sea dragon, he realizes they only won because every single fighter came fully equipped. He races through the capital, hunting answers around every corner. He's blown away by the weapons in the shop, then it hits him. Every single staff on display is built for wizards, leaving him with nothing but the wrong kind of staff, so not even a true sage could fight with it. He realizes this: Sajoas can swing a ton of different staves, but to unleash their real power, he has to get one custom made for him. Right then he starts scrambling. How can he get his hands on a sage's staff and fast? Eld runs into the cheerful girl again, and it instantly brightens his whole world. She welcomes him with open arms, even though it's only been a single day since they last saw each other. She smiles and offers her help, ready to jump in the second he needs anything at all. Eld can't help but marvel at how his card packs pure power, because wherever he goes, VIP treatment comes knocking. From shops all the way to bars, and after he spent the whole morning hunting, he finally leans in and tells her the truth: what he's really hunting for is a staff. Eld steps up and declares, loud and clear, he's done with swords now, and he's stepping into the role of a sage. A whole class devoted to magic. Then he fires off a bunch of simple spells to prove exactly what he can do. He finally admits that with a sword he's no stronger than a rookie. Then the girl's jaw drops because she realizes the sage job isn't strength at all, it's pure magic, the kind she's never heard of before. Eld tells them that beating the sea dragon with his sword style isn't some magic trick. Any beginner can pull it off if they grind hard enough. Even with that performance, he tells her straight up that his real calling is sage magic, and she's impressed, sure, but she still can't shake the worry that it's almost wasteful for someone this skilled to lean into magic instead of swordplay. Still, she nods and promises to show him the finest staves around, because she can't ignore how fiercely determined he is. Eld strides into a weapon room packed floor to ceiling with staves. and it leaves them completely stunned, because the quality is so top tier it feels like pure first-rate perfection. So he snaps to the real problem in an instant. No matter how great they are, not a single one of them can measure up to someone like him, a true sage. Eld spots one staff in the pile that instantly pulls his focus. People call it an ancient relic, but swear it's the worst they've got, so he snatches it on the spot with 0 second thoughts. Ellsworth hoists the staff, and the moment it clicks in his grip, he feels it, like destiny, confirming it was made for sages all along. What everyone tossed aside as junk turns out to be elite, top-tier staff work. People only missed it because the wizards tried to use it like a weapon, instead of the real magic it was meant to be. Eld's jaw drops when he hears the staff costs a jaw-clenching 25 million gil, so he can only clutch his 150,000 gil sword as the poor alternative. The girl catches him off guard. She offers a whopping 30 million gil for his sword, but the real prize slips right out of the deal. She wants the membership number stamped on the back of his guild card. Eld finally realizes she isn't trapping him at all, she just wants his guild membership number. Then she slides him a staff and tells him the catch: any request can only be aimed at one specific adventurer. So yeah, using that number. The tasks won't be forced, but she's dangling seriously generous rewards to make him say yes, and Eld realizes she'll shell out 30 million gil just to get the privilege to request him straight up. The girl tells him 30 million gil is the going rate for an A-rank adventurer, then leans in and says she has to lock in his power before anyone else spots what he's worth. Eld gets the point, she's betting on him, and he can't refuse, so with a grin, he agrees to the deal. With a humbled nod, he accepts her trust, then slips away, still pleading for her to grant him lenient requests. The girl flashes a warm smile, and you can feel her excitement for what's coming next. Meanwhile, the story cuts straight into the city's loud, crowded streets, where everything is alive and moving. While everyone hurried through their day beneath the looming grand castle looming overhead. Eld strides through the city streets, replaying the gear and money Mina handed him, praise in his head, but a warning too: don't chase anything impossible. Out of nowhere, something snaps his focus instantly, forcing him to slam the brakes and twist around with a wary, suspicious stare. Eld strides through the city clutching his brand new staff, and then, like a warning bell, he suddenly senses something strange nearby. Realizing someone's on his heels, he doesn't blink. He stays razor alert and scans every corner like something's about to snap. Eld steps up and confronts the man, closing the distance while keeping right on his tail, who pops out and reveals he's a full-on guild employee. He tells them he's been watching Eld ever since that ferry incident. He's left speechless by what he does, then he leans in and makes it clear. His job is to hunt down the strongest adventurers and bring them to the guild. Elblison's guild employee leaned in and declared it straight. The guild has a formal subjugator role, big, steady rewards for anyone strong enough to back it up. Eld gets why it's basically a civil servant kind of job, but he can't ignore the catch: he'd be stuck drowning in non-stop, annoying requests. The man swears Eld would get accepted in a heartbeat thanks to his razor-sharp perception, but Eld shuts him down. He wants to stay independent. The guild scout's crushed, yet he still slips away, leaving that door open in case Eld changes his mind. Eld stared at the gap between the game and this world. Back then there was no real subjugator role, and ignored requests didn't even matter, but here, when people's pleas went unanswered, real folks paid the price. Eld swallows the truth and locks in. He'll only take on the requests he can handle for now. Eld storms up to the request board and freezes, because there are barely any postings, and he immediately suspects the usual subjugators are hogging all the work, leaving almost nothing for him. Curious, he strides up to the counter to ask about the requests, and the receptionist greets him with a bright, welcoming smile. The elder fires off a question: any monster subjugation requests available, and the receptionist quickly shuts him down, saying most monsters get taken care of by the royal army while they train, so there's barely anything left for everyone else. So Eld can't shake the feeling that he should ditch this place and head somewhere else. Before he heads out, he asks the guild receptionist if she can log his job change too, and she grins, nods, and asks what job he just switched to. Eld strikes up his introduction, calling himself a sage, but the receptionist just stares. She's never heard of that class in her life. Eld finally realizes the brutal truth: this whole world only counts jobs approved at the coming-of-age ceremony. He remembers this: if you want to register a job at the guild, you've got to prove it with a job jewel that flashes your class like mage or warrior, but his weird, unique class probably won't get recognized through that thing. Eld decides to hold off on reporting his job change for now, convinced that staying a novice won't hurt him. The receptionist dismisses the inferior jobs, and even she admits she doesn't really know much, but that's exactly why Eld freezes when he hears the word. As she breaks it down, she points out that some lower jobs exist, like berserker or saint, but they're usually flimsy, they crumble in parties, and they often throw in the towel halfway through. Elder remembers how, back in BBO, every job got split into two groups, basic and superior. In this world, you start with basic jobs, mages, swordsmen, archers, healers, and if you climb higher, you unlock the real legends, sages, heroes, saints, even berserkers. That's exactly why everyone's so stuck on what his current class even is. ELT breaks down how jobs work here and how it all compares to BBO. Here, the jobs you earn from the coming-of-age ceremony are treated like total failures, unlike in BBO, where they're celebrated as a win. And when basic jobs level up, they skyrocket faster by beating the same number of monsters. Superior jobs feel like burdens, sure, but Elter argues that top-tier skills should be strong enough to outweigh that weight, and he can't shake the question of why they're suddenly treated like they're inferior. Curiosity hits him hard. He demands to know why Saint Class, with its insane healing power, gets labeled as a weaker job. Eld's jaw drops when the guild clerk looks at him like divine heal is a foreign language, something he treats like basic knowledge. When he realizes this world can't even grasp the basics of core abilities, frustration snaps into him, pure confusion on the edge of panic. So he decides, for now, it's safer to stay locked in as a rookie, even as he seethes inside at how clueless everyone here really is. Eld finally realizes the royal capital is a dead end, nothing new is being requested, so he kicks off toward another city, ready to chase his luck somewhere else. Then the man steps forward and tells them his name, Mages, a count from some far-off corner of the world, and greets Eld with real politeness. He swallows the hard truth, says goodbye, and heads straight to Mina, telling her he's decided to leave the capital. Eld blows off steam about chasing the life of an adventurer, then hits a wall in the capital, because there aren't any subjugation requests at all. Mina tells him the city stays calm with only small jobs, and someone like him would just get wasted doing nothing big. She insists that top-tier adventurers can shake the economy to its core. Elle remembered the moment she tore through danger to save the Maxia company's ship, packed with major names, and yes, even her. Eld can't shake the question of whether that ship he saved was truly worth it, and Meaner shuts him down hard. Its loss would have plunged the whole country straight into chaos. When Eld was asked where he'd head next, he grinned and said he picked Fiesta, because it's close by and the perfect place to kick things off. Mina nods and tells him, trust me, you'll find a ton of requests in there. Over by Mina, Eld hears the bombshell. There's still a big subjugation request up for grabs in the capital. It all comes down to crushing the C-rank menace, the Great Mole. Eld's eyes widen. He's realizing he's never heard of this creature at all, and his gut tells him it has to be something only this world could create. Mina straight up tells him that Maxia's company has its own farm field in the royal capital, way smaller than the country's big main farmland. Eld discovers that the great moles have stormed the place, and they're chewing through the crops like a threat with teeth. Mina then leans in and dares him to take them down, promising a whopping 500,000 gil for every single one he eliminates. Eld swipes the subjugation request without hesitation, clocking the insane pay he's about to rake in. Mina says great moles are pure trouble since they vanish underground and won't let you get a grip, and El says he'll try his best, so before he heads out, Mina tells him to grab the map and the request form. El steps out toward the royal capital's edge, clutching a map in his hand, eyes locked on the sprawling city and the towering castle. He's sure the place he's hunting is right around here. Eld rides into a massive farming region right beside the royal capital. He stared at how massive it was, stunned that they desold it to him as small, and his mind wouldn't stop spinning. He decides he can't leave questions hanging and storms to the farmhouse, pounding on the door to demand answers from the manager. Nelda heads to the farmland management office, tracks down a worker, and hands over Mina's request form. Then he lights up, gratefully confirming he's got the task. Eldon demands to know which of those fields actually belongs to the Maxia company. He barged in to smash the great moles, and the worker shot back. Maxia company doesn't just run one field. But all the farmland in sight, Eld's jaw drops in disbelief. He finally grasped just how massive this whole area was, and realized he'd have to fight his way through the moles, one deal at a time. Eld can't stop thinking about how huge Maxia company's power must be. Just look at how massive their fields are. Even with doubts clawing at him, he still nods and takes the job head-on. He tells them the farmland might not survive, but the worker laughs it off. Just don't use fire magic and everything stays intact. The farm worker immediately offers to fetch help for Eld, worry tightening in his chest as he knows just how brutal this task is. Eld drops to one knee, presses his hand to the ground, and tells her in a steady voice that he's got this, alone. With total confidence, he throws down his claim. Every monster will flock to the exact spot where he's standing. Eld drops to a crouch on the field, eyes locked in, slamming his hand against the ground, while the worker stares back, utterly baffled, like he can't figure out what Eld is even trying to do. Moments later, energy bursts out in tight circular ripples as he unleashes Earthbait, a skill built to reel the monsters straight toward him. Magical waves roared across the ground, blasting out in a huge circle, and Eld knows the underground monsters don't hunt by sight, they track magical energy. With this move, he reels them in and traps them right where he wants them. Soon the earth starts shaking with a thunderous, bone-deep rumble. As several presences close in, Eldeste stays ice-calm, eyes locked tight as the monsters start creeping up from the depths. Huge moles erupted violently from the ground. Ripping through the farmland, the blast tore up the soil and sent crops flying in every direction. Eld braces his staff and realizes these creatures wreck everything just by surfacing. He nods like he's already figured it out, then steadies his breath and braces to confront them head-on. Eld slams his will into the ground, and razor-sharp ice pillars burst up like towering spears as the massive moles charge straight at him. Only for it to get skewered and halted by a brutal wave of ice. The farmland bucks and shudders under the hit while Eldstens digs in and holds his ground. Staff gripped tight, he commanded the battlefield with ruthless precision. Eld stood amid the dead, frozen moles, their bodies skewered on towering ice pillars, while the farmland around him got ripped apart and shattered by that brutal magic. Facing the stunned woman, he locked eyes like the world suddenly went quiet. Eld finally cracks and admits he wrecked the fields way more than he ever meant to. Throwing out apologies for the total chaos his power had torn through. Eld rushes back after finishing the job, hands in the completed mole's subjugation, tagged under Mina Maxia's name. He storms into the room where Mina's waiting, and her attendant blares his arrival, leaving Mina stunned at how fast he came back. Mina fires off a quick question, "Did you forget something?" But Eld just shrugs and says he's already handled it, and Mina can't help but be blown away by how insanely fast he finished. Mina's jaw drops when she hears Eld already finished the request, and she blurts out, stunned and in total disbelief. She thought there were only about 20 great moles, but Eld shut that down fast, 31 in total, and he made sure to wipe every single one out, then already sent his report straight to the guild. Mina, still reeling, blurts out how Eld pulled it off so fast. Eld just smiles and says he used a skill to lure the monsters in. He tosses magical bait to lure them in before he strikes them down, and Mina's jaw drops because he's using both the sword and magic like it's nothing. She can't believe it. Eld explains he mostly fights with magic and keeps the sword only as a last resort backup. Then once the job's done, he's ready to storm off toward Jasta. Mina steals her breath with awe as he thanks her for the chance, and she can't help but call him a monster like it's the highest compliment. Then Eld finishes the job, prepares to head out, and rides off with words of encouragement ringing in his ears. The Maxia company hands him a massive 20 million gil payout for his service, and he's left staring in total disbelief at the sheer amount. He sits there stunned by how massive the company really is, and when they spell out the payment as an extra reward, Eld goes quiet, fully impressed, and painfully aware of just how powerful they truly are. Eld bursts into Jasta and sprints straight for the guild. He scans the request board and realizes there aren't many openings, but at least a few are posted, and that means he's got something to chase, starting right now. Eld strides up to the receptionist and fires off a question, "Are there no monsters because the town is so close to the royal capital?" Then he adds, "Even if I'm headed to the next town after this, I still want to take at least one request from here." What? Curiosity sparked in him. He leaned in and asked if you can take a request in just one city. But he had to file the final word in a different one, and the receptionist cleared it up fast. As long as it's under the same country's guild system, and he shows up with the request form plus proof he's already subjugated it, they'll accept it. Eld takes 2 subjugation requests, one targeting the weed mantis, and another for the massive poison toad. The receptionist practically sighs with relief that requests are still open, then Eld freezes, stunned she heard her say still. She tells you the real reason. Fiesta doesn't just work like that, because it's got 2 heavy hitters behind it, the ones who usually chew up most of the requests. Then a huge weapon flashes on screen, hammering home how feared and powerful those names really are. Long-haired warrior trudging down a forest path with a spear riding their back, while sunbeams cut through the trees, because the narration makes one thing crystal clear. Ever since Flamespear showed up, everything has changed. Eld hears the legend of an adventurer called Flamespear. Everyone whispers about his insane power, and that special nickname follows him everywhere. Now that Gillert's gone, Flamespear is being hailed as the world's strongest solo adventure. He stops and thinks, blown away by Flamespear's legend, but then the weight of Gillert vanishing hits him hard. After he wraps up his business, he's ready to leave, burning that info into his mind. Eld slips into a silent forest, then makes up his mind and decides. This is the right moment, so you better push forward. He kicks on his magic search and unleashes a surge of energy that ripples through the whole area. The skill darts its vision across the whole area, like it's reading every corner in real time. An Eld's sharp gaze snaps onto something as he suddenly senses movement or the presence of someone lurking right nearby. Meld spots a squad of 10 weed mantises nearly a kilometer off, closing in to size up the whole situation. He steels himself, slams his skill into motion, and turns his magic into a stealth cloak, vanishing his presence and hiding his visibility as he charges straight toward them. Eld flicks on his concealment skill, *magic invisibility ***, and as it slips over him, he vanishes from sight, snatches the first hit before his enemies even realize he's there, even though the invisibility will snap off the moment he casts another spell. He creeps through the forest like smoke, vanishing into the shadows around him. Eld slips up on the weed mantises without a single soul noticing, and pours his magic straight into the air. Flames suddenly explode into view, and it catches him completely off guard. And before they can react, a blazing ring erupts around the whole group, sealing them inside his scorching flame circle. The weed mantises got swallowed by raging flames, and all that's left behind is nothing but scorched, charred remains. Eld flashes that everything's done, then leans back and tells how he pulled it off. He hunts with magic like a spotlight, searching for targets, slipping in unseen, and blasting them with offensive spells to end it fast. Then he clocks it as the perfect way to wipe out a whole pile of enemies solo. Eld snaps to attention when he hears a disturbance in the forest, then fires off his magic search without wasting a second. He senses something off in the distance, and then boom, he spots a massive creature looming ahead like trouble is already marching toward him. Eld spots someone going toe-to-toe in the forest, and instantly realizes they're fighting an area boss. These bosses are brutal, powerful monsters that only show up during certain cycles, and when you finally take them down, they shower you with massive experience, turning them into the perfect target to level up fast. Eld slips in with his invisibility magic, gliding in unseen to size up the whole battle. He's ready to jump in and help the moment the fighter starts to falter, because he knows that even after area bosses get taken down by just 2 people, the fight still hits hard. They still dump a massive chunk of experience, then a female warrior rockets forward and slams her spear straight into the monster. But it gets slammed right back by the sheer force of its own unstoppable attack. Crashing to the ground, Eld, watching from nearby, snaps into action with pure concern as he braces to step in. A sharp-tongued female adventurer grabs El and warns him to get out, now, while she keeps trading blows with a colossal beast. The monster bursts into view as the raging ape, and for something that huge, it rockets forward way faster than you'd expect. Eld knows this thing is far tougher than even the sea dragon. Eld watches the female adventurer fight for her life as the raging ape tears through everything in front of her. He suddenly realizes his current skills don't stand a chance, so he decides to step in and commits to spending his skill points to turn the tide. He skips the church's whole skill ritual and jumps straight into learning new powers, shadow fog and blood poison included. Eld ties everything down, then fires up his fresh skills with command after command, straight from BBO. He fires a sticky bomb first, blasting the area and igniting an explosion just to yank everyone's attention. Then he fires off magical taunt asterisk, and the raging ape's asterisk fury snaps off its target, straight onto him. A furious ape rockets toward Eld, totally hooked by a magical taunt spell. The adventurer freezes in terror, eyes locked on the chaos, clueless about what's happening, while Eld stays icy calm, like she knows she hasn't poked him without a plan. A rampaging ape lunges with everything it's got, but Eld digs in, stands his ground, and gears up his magic. The adventurer gasps as he pours magical energy into his staff, then readies himself to strike back. Eld throws his shadow fog over the rampaging ape and it staggers, like its every move just got locked down. And then he hurls blood poison down like a deadly curse, spreading poison across the field to smash the creature's strength from the inside. The raging ape screams in fury, then the poisoned fog swallows it whole. Shadow fog blinds it from the inside, and a slow blood poison keeps sucking the life right out of its body. He pushes the power down, and the adventurer snaps in shock when he realizes he actually managed to pin that raging ape, even beating her too. He brushes off the praise and turns straight to healing her wounds. With his healing magic, he wipes away every ounce of her pain, then she just stares, blown away by what he can do. The adventurer's jaw drops when he sees him fire off brutal offensive magic and then flip into healing magic, an unheard of combo. While he keeps that raging ape on a leash, he can't stop thinking about how shockingly clueless most adventurers are about sages. He admits his spell can't fully trap it, so they lock in and push to finish the fight. He realizes trying to take down that rampaging ape with poison alone would drag on for way too long. As they huddle and hammer out the reinforcements, the female adventurer suddenly drops the mask. She's the world's strongest known adventurer, the Flamespear, and she tells everyone her name is Milia. Eld's eyes nearly popped when he found out Milia was the Flamespear, because in his mind, the strongest adventurer was supposed to be a man. He steps up, introduces himself, and tells her, "Just call me El," as she finally lets him call her Milia. Milia's cheeks burn with embarrassment as she can't hold back the raging ape, and she blurts out a desperate apology. As Eld steadies her, curiosity gnaws at you, so curious. He blurts out asking if her title, Flamespear, comes from owning the flame weapon skill, and when he hears her answer, he's hit with real surprise. Milia finally unveils her real title as a hero, while Eld realizes her role crushes the job he had back in his old world, even if she's still weaker here. He realizes her insane potential is going to waste without the right know-how and skills, especially with a class that's strong, and then he spots his opening, grabs Milia, and pushes her to help him so they can slam the battle shut fast. Eld tells Milia to keep hammering with non-stop strikes as he draws the ape's attention, pushing her to use a basic move, combo attack, to overwhelm it. Stunned, she blurts, "I don't know," and it hits Eld like a punch. He wastes no time, buys the skill for her on the spot, and then orders her to repeat every single word exactly like he does so it finally powers up. Milia's eyes go wide when that brand new skill suddenly kicks in. Eldon demands she hacks at the air with her spear, chanting the skill's name like it's a battle spell. With his lead in her ear, she explodes forward, screams the combo attack, and slams her strike into the fight. Right as he tries the technique for the first time, Milia freezes in disbelief. She actually nails it and activates the skill. Wondering how it all went down and who Eld truly is, he just grins and waves it off, claiming he's only an F-rank adventurer with a bit of know-how, then casually drops the hint that there are other ways to pick up skills too. Milia doesn't buy Eld's story at all, because an F-rank adventurer shouldn't know things like that, yet Eld stays cool and swears he really does. Suddenly, they're both caught off guard as the raging ape explodes forward in a wave of power, towering over them and crashing back in like it's ready to rip into them again. Raging ape explodes forward with unstoppable power, towering over them, and it's ready to smash into the fight again. The raging ape rips free of the ground restraints. Thrashing wildly even as its vision gets swallowed up, the monster still lashes out blindly. Eld slams the warning home. Those random attacks can still wreck them. Millie clenched herself and pushed forward to keep fighting. Then Eld shut off the status effects and stepped in to grab the monster's full rage head-on. He shoves Milia to unleash that fresh combo while he braces himself, holding back the raging eighth. Shoving her to her limit, he forced her to stop hesitating and finally swing her strike. The raging ape rockets forward and unleashes a devastating strike. But Eld slams up Magic Guard, his deadliest defense, and the barrier holds firm, so he nods at Milia to unleash the hit. Milia focuses her power, lights her spear ablaze, and unleashes a flaming weapon in one explosive strike. With pure grit, she barrels straight at the furious ape and slams into it head-on. Milia unleashes a brutal combo, and with blazing force, she smashes the furious ape down hard. The beast snaps back in agony as her relentless fiery punches keep crashing down. You flooded it with relentless energy, crushing through every ounce of resistance. Milia braced herself with pure, unshakable determination. She digs in with all her strength and shoves forward straight into the raging ape. Flames whirl around her spear as she rockets forward with pure, unstoppable power. Unleashed a crushing blow, shouting with iron resolve as the power erupted. Milia drives her fiery strike forward, and it hits like a meteor, pure, overwhelming force. Watch him unleash the raging ape, then it slams down to the ground, shattered and defeated. She locks eyes on her weapon, stunned in awe at the overwhelming power she just unleashed, power she genuinely never believed she'd be able to summon. After they finally crush the raging ape, Eld and Milia both level up from the fight, and Milia can't believe how easily it went down, until she realizes it wasn't luck at all, it was their teamwork. Eld credits her hard work and deep know-how, even if she's still stuck at F rank. With a grin, he leans in and asks Milia if she wants to team up with him, just for a while. Milia stares at Eld's offer in disbelief, because the moment he suggests forming a party, surprise hits her like a punch. Eld admits he's been battling tons of boss-class monsters lately, but even with all that fight, he still can't bring them down fast enough by himself. They carve through the fight with her firepower, split every reward evenly, and even get him to teach her skills, and Milia buys it, even if she can't wrap her head around how he's supposedly ranked all the way down at F. Milia and Eld clasp hands and lock in a deal to work as one, and the moment that handshake lands, a dangerous new duo is born. Ready to take on the future together, Eld breaks down how skill points can completely reshape the way you fight. He makes it crystal clear, once you spend it, you can't get it back. Then he hits you with the brutal catch that you'll never be able to master every single skill. He's already got a plan for his own power and thinks it the strongest there is, so Milia, totally lost, turns to him for answers on which skills will make her truly stronger. Eld leans in and asks Milia straight up if she's ever learned a skill before. She tells him, I learned flame weapon, but I figured real skill only comes from fighting and getting that experience in your bones. Eldon realizes the world's got a messed up idea about skills, and he's shocked to learn that while churches can teach the basics, most people are completely oblivious. Eldon leans in and grills Milia about her level. She cracks and says she's level 118, then he urges her to keep leveling up. But she shuts that idea down, saying it's totally unnecessary, until Milia brings up hauling the ape's body to the guild. Eldon doesn't just cast spells anymore, he slots them into magic storage. He stashed it in an instant, and it totally caught her off guard. Milius's eyes went wide as the ape's body vanished out of nowhere. Old Kumlai leans in and tells her he used magic storage to stash it in another dimension, then watches her face freeze with pure shock at what he just pulled off. Milia swallows her doubts, accepts Elda's bizarre powers, and vows to press on with him. Then they launch forward, bristling with pure determination. Right after they're back in the fight, they pair up shoulder to shoulder and tear into another rampaging ape, showing off pure power and perfect teamwork. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eld and Milia finally called it a night, after tearing through a whole pack of monsters and winning every fight. They both nod like, all right, we're heading back, and the progress is right there in the numbers. Milia rockets from level 18 to 19, while Eld jumps from 7 to 10, showing serious growth for both. Eld and Milia dragged the raging ape's corpse straight into the guild. The receptionist froze in pure shock, staring like she'd never seen anything like it before. Milia drops the bombshell, this is an A-rank monster. She jolts in surprise, then wastes no time, rushing to grab the branch manager and shut the whole thing down. Eld pulls Milia aside and quietly begs her to take the credit for bringing down the rampaging ape, because he wants none of the spotlight, none of the chaos that would erupt if people realized a fresh novice pulled off a victory like that. Surprised but hooked, Milia listens as Eld snaps that he doesn't care about the recognition. Right then, the branch manager storms in, stunned to learn they really crushed an A-rank monster, and Eld immediately steadies Milia, telling her that if she ever has second thoughts, she should speak up. At the guild, the branch manager lines in and demands the price of those raging apes. Milia blurts out that it was mostly Eld who finished it off, despite Eld's earlier plea to stay quiet. Then the manager goes wide-eyed and demands Eld prove it. Eld panics and scrambles to cover his tracks while Milia snaps back, and when the truth hits her, she blushes, apologizes, and admits nobody ever told her she was supposed to keep secrets like that. At the guild, Milia thrusts Eldo in front of everyone and labels him an F-rank rookie. Then the branch manager's jaw hits the floor. I can't wrap my head around it. Someone that high up actually stood toe-to-toe with an A-rank monster. Amelia lays it out, newbies can't climb ranks under the guild system, so Eld got screwed and is trapped at the very bottom, even with those insane abilities of his, and Eld looks genuinely shocked to hear it. Milia reveals they overhauled the ranking system to stop rookies from getting shoved into brutal, dangerous requests they can't handle, because dragging novices into higher roles was only turning inferior jobs into a struggle nobody could survive. She says that around 10 years ago, Cardinal Georges reshaped the whole system into what it is today, and Eld can't stand it, calling it completely unfair. Believing strength should matter more than any fancy title, he can't shake the feeling this shift reeks of a conspiracy. Then the guildmaster rushes in with an apology and still insists, those are the rules right now. Elgrove can't shake the feeling that the whole system is rotten, like the best jobs get shoved aside as if they're trash, so he digs into it, remembering the capital's cathedral, once used for job changes, now lies in ruins, and that screams trouble, maybe connected to Cardinal George's reforms. At the guild, the master's jaw drops when Melia blurts out Eld's name, because he's somehow pinned down a rampaging ape, even though he's only F-rank. Then the guild master leans in and asks, did you register in Ilya? And once Eld blurts out his name, his identity is confirmed. Rumors exploded about Eld, the Ilya F-rank newbie, bragging that he even clashed head-on with a sea dragon. The guild master reels when he realizes it's him, and then offers to bump his rank up as a special favor, but Eld, terrified of drawing attention, hesitates hard. The master says taking on the sea dragon by himself is already a massive win, and with the branch manager's recommendation plus everything he's accomplished, his rank can finally be officially upgraded. Eld grabs the guildmaster's nod of approval, thanks him for the rank boost, and then slaps his guild card down for the final confirmation. The guildmaster shrugs at Eld's huge list of wins, basically saying being a sage is one of those mysterious, nobody really knows jobs, same deal as all the so-called low-tier roles. Eld realizes something brutal. The sage class gets the same cold treatment as Melia's hero role, misunderstood and pushed aside. He remembers how heroes used to be treated the exact same way until just recently, and he can't shake the thought that if he'd been born 200 years earlier, they'd have dismissed him as yet another clueless novice. Eld laughs at the whole "you'll never know the sage class" curse, because it can't be earned through the coming-of-age ceremony, but honestly, that means nothing to him. He already knows everything about sages. The guildmaster leans in and tells him, "Good news, your rank is up to E," even though ranks only climb one step at a time, and Eldon nods with pure gratitude, ready to push even harder and prove himself again. Eldon Milia sealed the deal on the Raging Ape, stunned because its price smashed past 100 million gills. Eld slips the reward into his magical storage, staring at how insanely valuable it is. Then once the deal is locked, he pivots to Eld's skills, promising they'll dive deeper before they head for the new hunting grounds, and he finally turns to Milia. "You ready?" But just when they're about to move forward, everything gets cut short. A ruthless blood tiger suddenly erupts into the scene, and danger hits the air instantly. Snag their attention and then slam in for the strike. Milia tells you the blood tiger is a monster leagues above any B rank it should face, packed with brutal attack power, serious durability, and lightning agility, far stronger than the Raging Ape. Eld stays rock steady and tells her that the skill build he taught her earlier should be more than enough. Milia's jaw drops as she realizes he's brushing the threat off like it weighs nothing at all. Milia starts to feel unstoppable, convinced she can take on the challenge, because Eld's F*G. And approval finally met her unshakable determination. Milia snaps her skill to life and rockets straight ahead, charging for her opening. As it lunged like a nightmare, he clashed head-on with the ferocious blood tiger. Milia unleashes a violent flurry of combo strikes, her moves turbocharged by the perfect attack field. Colliding headfirst with the blood tiger's unstoppable power. Milia snaps a perfect hit into the blood tiger, landing the strike dead on, using the guard piers to smash holes in its defenses. As Eld breaks down what the skill truly is, he lays it all bare. Milia unleashes the support attack skill, locking in her full strength like a target. Her weapon flares with raw power as she readies herself to strike. The blood tiger rockets toward her, roaring with unstoppable fury. Milia dug in her stance, and her weapons erupted with raw, earth-shaking power. With fire in her eyes, she snaps into action and unleashes her ultimate move. A full burst crash hit the air, ready to strike with brutal, overwhelming force. Eldo tells them that full burst crash slams their attack power through the roof, without canceling a single previous upgrade, making it a hero-only offensive technique. Milia rockets forward with pure grit, right as the blood tiger barrels in to collide with her head-on. The blood tiger lunges like a nightmare at its target, fangs snapping, and Millie clamps herself tight, then stomps the ground and blasts out a thunderous strike, shaking the entire battlefield with shockwaves. Flames burst to life around her weapon as smoke churns in the air, then the blood tiger rockets forward, claws bared, ready to tear into her. Milius hammers her foot to the ground, and a shockwave of pure force blasts into the beast. When the blast finally fades, she plants her feet and raises her spear, flames roaring, locked and ready to strike. Engulfed in rising smoke from the brutal clash, the air itself felt like it was screaming. Elda stopped and mused on the brutal strength of the hero build, one of the biggest damage dealers around, second only to the sage. Milia grasps just how powerful she's become, and the truth hits hard. Being a hero means facing multiple opponents head-on and winning, even when she's alone. Joy and pride surged through her after the win, and she proudly declared her victory like it was earned every single step. Just as Milia finally catches her breath after the brawl, a second blood tiger erupts from the shadows with a brutal leap. Still reeling and totally unready, she realizes far too late that another threat was already poised to strike. Blood Tiger slams in with a wild lunge, but Eldo rockets into the way, throwing his shield up and blocking the hit to protect Milia. Their teamwork clicks, everyone hits together in perfect unison, and they shove the beast back like it can't stand the pressure. After everything settles, Eldo finally steps up and gives Milius the credit he's earned. As she steadies herself, relief floods her for a second, then determination snaps back in. Eldo thrusts his shield up and stops the tiger's strike dead in its tracks, then calmly lays out why there are tougher defenses and smarter techniques, like that counter combo, that doesn't just shove the enemy back, it cranks up your own power too. Eldo fires off his magic and zeroes in on even more enemies lurking nearby. Then he cuts down the blood tiger in a blur, finishing it off fast. He unleashed a blazing fire spell on his target, then braced himself for the brutal battle still ahead. Milia starts to worry that Eldo could actually take on everything by himself, and that's where the tension spikes because. But Eldo admits the magic just isn't strong enough at the moment to carry the hunt on its own, so he straight up needs her help to keep everything moving fast. Eldo leans in and tells Milia that a pack of blood tigers is circling nearby, and with the clock still on their side, they lock eyes and decide to keep the hunt going together. Energized and itching for round 2, they were totally ready to smash the next challenge. Milia slams the hero's defensive skill, Overguard, into action. She finally realizes this power can supercharge her defense, so with some guidance, she learns how to lock onto it and unleash it with deadly precision. Eldo breaks it down as she sharpens both her offense and defense, using it to shut down single strikes or wipe out a whole storm of attacks. Milia gets fired up. She's convinced her fresh strength could rocket her all the way to R rank, maybe even S. Eldo clocks her huge ambition, then readies himself to step in and guide her. To reach those insane heights, she's going to need the perfect skill build, like no room for mistakes. Eldo throws Milia into a ring of blood tigers, multiple at once, teaching her what the next stage truly costs, then fires the question at her, "You ready for this? Because a far tougher battle is coming." Milia rockets into battle with total confidence, ready to crush the blood tigers for good, but Eldo can't shake a bad feeling as he realizes this fight might not be the easy win she's imagining. Milia slams into the ground and a brutal shock wave explodes outward. A wave slammed through the place, and the sheer force rippled outward like it had a pulse. The blood tigers get shoved back as she steadies herself, dust and chaos exploding around them while she digs in, ready to strike. Milia swings out a massive wide attack, and her weapon slices clean through the space right in front of her. With one brutal strike, he drives back several blood tigers at the same time, crushing everything in its path with sheer reach and brutal power. Milia unleashes her first all-out wide strike, and the blood tigers refuse to go down. She lunges forward and forces herself to cut through them again, ready to strike with one more crushing sweep. But right in the middle of the fight, her weapon throws her a shocking surprise, and her attention snaps to it instantly. Milia gets boxed in by a pack of blood tigers, and panic crashes over her as they surge in from every side. She fights for her life, shouting for Eldo as flames suddenly roar into the scene, teasing that his intervention is right around the corner, if it even comes in time. The blood tigers get swallowed by raging flames, crumbling into ash, while Milia stays locked inside her barrier, totally safe. Eldo grips his staff, watching the wreckage unfold with ice-cold calm, because it was his magic that wiped those enemies out. Milia barrels toward Eldo, finally breathing easy, then he calmly lays out every mistake she made during the battle. He tells her she botched it. She tried to power up her shockwave with a support hit, but she never factored in the cooldown of that wide attack. Eldo tells her, "Don't just run it back, pull out a different skill first, then repeat it again only after you've fully locked in how it works." Milia admits she lost control for a second, and Eldo swoops in, steadying her. He praised how lightning-fast she snapped into action with Overguard, and you could tell, he recognized she was born with real battle instincts. She's left flustered, but her gratitude hits hard. Eldo and Milia lock in, decide to keep training, and march straight into the next challenge with pure determination. Back in town, the guild members are left stunned, eyes bulging, hearts racing, as the unexpected hits them like a punch. Moldo and Milia storm back to the guild with a mountain of blood tigers they've crushed, and the whole place goes silent when they reveal they just hauled in all 73. The guild staff just stood there, completely stunned and buried under the sheer avalanche of numbers. Every guild in the room can't wrap their heads around Eldo's performance, and E-rank should never look that powerful. Milia instantly sees the talent behind it, and when the guildmaster finally admits he misjudged him, you can feel the whole place shift. Suddenly, Eldo starts unleashing his magic, and the whole crowd snaps their attention to him, because nobody has the slightest clue what he's about to pull off. Eldor finally cracks the truth. He's been hiding those monsters in another space the whole time with his magic storage power. He blindsides the guildmaster, and even though he's not totally sure what he's seeing, he still admits this technique is ridiculously useful. Milia just stares and says it's crazy. Eldo has all this power and all this knowledge, yet he somehow never tries to draw attention. Suspicion hangs in the air as the guildmaster nods and promises to keep it all under wraps, because no one would ever buy that a brand new face could pull off something like that. Eldo's hard-won wins rocket him straight into a promotion. He's bumped up to D rank. The guildmaster leans in and warns him that climbing higher won't be a cakewalk anymore, since the other branches have to sign off on it. Eldo grabs the promotion and goes all in on leveling up, because they're already sitting on enough money. Eldo decides to climb ranks the hard way, by stacking guild achievements instead of rushing for an instant promotion, because he's laser-focused on getting one step closer to his own personal goal. Melio throws his full weight behind his choice. And then the guildmaster drops a shocking secret. There's a special request out there, but only adventurers like them, the strong ones, can even touch it. The guild throws them straight into the perilous forest of death for a reconnaissance mission. A brutal place where only a tiny slice of adventurers make it out alive, so every step feels like it could be your last. The guildmaster lanes in and flat out warns you, only the big-time monsters roam that forest, so picking who goes is a make-or-break decision. Eldo snatches the request, reads it, and starts digging in. And it comes with a sketchy map showing a huge, bizarre pillar hidden deep inside the forest. Eldo spots the pattern right away. This ceiling pillar isn't random, it's the whole structure. Known for monsters that laugh in the face of area bosses, way stronger like raid-tier nightmares, so when the guildmaster hears a report about a sighting, he wastes no time. Someone needs to investigate fast, because if it's real, they'll have to cook up real countermeasures. Eldo grabs the mission like it's already his. Knowing full well how brutal it could get, thinking even a monster stampede was on the table. Even after he warns Milia about the danger, she doesn't back down. She steels her resolve and vows to face it right beside him. The next day, Eldo roars and unleashes a brutal, massive burst of flames. Devastating everything around him with raw magic, Milia snaps into action, surging forward with pure, unshakable determination. In the forest of death, Eldo and Milia fight tooth and nail, slamming back relentless, vicious enemies. Milia drives herself to blaze forward for more achievements, but Eldo snaps back, grilling her about why she's in such a rush. It's like a storm is brewing under the surface. Milia just drops the truth, her real ambition. Using the adventurer honor system, she pushes hard to climb the ranks and earn her way into nobility. She's dead set on clawing back her fallen family's stolen title and status, and when Eldo hears her out, he's stunned by how fierce her resolve is. Eldo finally clicks Milia isn't chasing some fantasy. She's desperate to bring her fallen house back to life, so he urges them both to stay alive, chase achievements, and make it happen. Milia nods, eyes locked in, ready to fight. They share a tense, silent look, then both of them press forward like they've just made their final choice. Sildo and Milia sprint right up to the ceiling pillar. Meldo explains that its orange glow starts flickering about 5 days before the raid boss even shows up. And then he noticed the colors weren't just pretty, they were ticking like a countdown, screaming that the moment was now. They rush to report what they found, because the time to get ready is already running out. Eldo and Milia storm back to the guild, breathless and urgent, shouting that the ceiling pillar. A stampede is coming just 5 days from now. The guild staff went pale with shock, then snapped into action, planning warding devices right away because they all knew this situation was deadly serious. The guild tells him the barrier won't be ready for around 4 days, but they swear it'll kick on just in time. They swore they'd push ELDO for a promotion at C rank, and bet Milia could crush her rank test if they only managed to survive that stampede for now. The guild orders them to stay in the city and gear up for the looming threat, and then the day of the stampede finally slams into place. A colossal protective barrier locks into place around the city, and it powers up just in the nick of time. Milia freezes when she sees it for the first time, wondering if this defense can really hold back what's coming, while Eldo stays ice calm, quietly accepting that it's already activated. They finally explain what the barrier is for. It doesn't smash the monsters, it shoves them back so hard they scramble away, until they're gone from sight. But then something wild hits. Eldo and Milia both feel the barrier start to fade, and suddenly they're staring like, wait, is this normal? They sprint off in a blur, and when they finally reach the center of town, they race to figure out what's going on. The barrier devices lay in ruins, shattered and bleeding thick smoke into the air. Eldo freezes in shock. He just realized the device built to protect the city is completely wrecked. Eldo and Milia stumble on injured guards sprawled near the wrecked device, and one shaken man shows a dark mark on his hand, admitting he's tied to the Garden of Despair. Eldo finally clocks that the guard slipped in just to sabotage the device, and the way it happened screams it wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate attack. Eldo suddenly clocks it. The saboteur had to be tied to the Garden of Despair. The guild members huddled around the wrecked device, and when they finally identified it, they realized it was an ancient tool from their ancestors, so repairing it felt nearly impossible. Even if you locked it in, it still wouldn't be back in action until it had time to recharge. By fleeing, he left the city exposed for days. Aldo stared at it and declared it an OOP art, a relic ripped from another world. The moment the city erupts in chaos, adventurers get the call to step in fast, and residents are rushed to evacuate before it all falls apart. Eldo realizes they can probably survive the horde, but the raid boss is a whole new kind of nightmare. It tears through everything in its way, no mercy, no pause, and when he realizes there's no other choice, he braces himself because once it shows up, nobody's getting out safe. Milia snaps her eyes to Eldo, stunned by what he's about to do, and then Eldo hands her the weight of guarding the city while he storms off to carry out his own mission. With pure determination blazing in his eyes, he vows to stop the stampede, no one else, just him. Eldo leans in and tells Milia he's got a plan, far from perfect, then begs her to stay ready if it all blows up, even as her worries crush her doubts. Eldo rockets forward with pure momentum, leaving her behind as he barrels straight into the danger. Then Eldo charges forward too. He finally admits he can't take down all these monsters by himself, so he locks onto the real answer. If he wants the stampede to stop, he has to beat the raid boss driving the whole thing. Eldo barrels forward toward the towering ceiling pillar, then the whole structure ignites with energy as it starts to lift clean off its foundation. As they release the fragments, a violent surge crackles through it, like something ancient is waking up inside. Then the ceiling pillar snaps, cracks, and starts to. It crumbled to pieces, and the chunks burst apart like a tiny explosion. Debris rockets into the sky as the structure crumples, and Eldo locks in, determined, unshakable. Totally aware that the monster locked inside is seconds away from breaking free. Beneath the shattered pillar, a colossal dragon bursts out of nowhere, roaring like the end of the world. Its body surged with crackling electricity, sparking like lightning in the dark. Eldo locks eyes with unwavering resolve. Spotting the enemy as the raid boss, he stared down the heaven-destroying lightning dragon. A colossal beast thrums with overwhelming power. Eldo grips his staff tight and flashes a confident grin, because back in BBO, everyone knew the Sage class was the strongest, and most players flocked to it. Now he gears up to prove it, ready to unleash its real power and crush the terrifying threat staring him down. As the alarm screams through town, the townspeople bolt through the streets, faces in full panic. The girl comes charging in, yelling at everyone to hurry up, and warning them the horde is closing in fast. From the watchtower and balconies, they stare across the horizon. Then one man finally locks eyes on the threat and blares the alarm, yanking the whole town into action. From the watchtower, the guards spot a massive horde of monsters closing in on the town, and when they see how fast they're coming, panic erupts, so everyone scrambles to slam the gates shut. The female knight, Flamespear, snaps into motion and sprints straight for the danger instead of falling back with the others, her resolve burning bright. The knight slams the gates shut behind her and bolts into the chaos by herself, swearing she'll stall the horde for as long as her life holds. Eyes brimming with worry, she calls Eldo's name in a silent prayer, then charges straight into the battlefield for his sake. A monstrous beast looms over the young man, and with it come crashing memories of the fight he barely survived. He remembers the first time he ever touched the game. This beast showed up as a brutal early boss, and it wiped the floor with him over and over until it felt unstoppable. Even after he finally hit the level cap back then, his skills still weren't strong enough to smash through it. A hulking, menacing monster towers over the battlefield, staring straight at the protagonist, and the young man shoots his gaze upward with pure, unshaking determination. Lightning snarls through the sky as the battle ignites, then the dragon blasts a brutal surge of electricity, scorching the ground and tearing everything nearby to pieces. The young man just watches, calm as ice, like he already knows what's coming. Even with the danger screaming at him, he clocked that the creature wrecks the area just by existing, and he refuses to panic because he's found counters and is getting ready to face the fight. Explosions rip through the air as the dragon's lightning slams the ground, and he doesn't even flinch. The young man snaps on a special anti-magic technique built to shrug off electricity, and with a protective energy shield flaring around him, he braces to wipe out a chunk of the incoming damage. The young man whips out of the way of the dragon's bone-crushing swings. Slipping in with pure speed and razor accuracy, he dodged the full impact of every attack. Even with his resistance keeping the lightning from fully spreading, he finally gets the horrible truth: this form can't take a direct hit. Thunder roars and a massive lightning bolt slams into the ground, smashing it to pieces. Then the young man's eyes flare wide with horror as he realizes what it is: divine lightning, pure, devastating power. The dragon roars and unleashes a catastrophic strike, blasting the battlefield with unstoppable, earth-shattering force. The earth rips open, smoke erupts everywhere, and the young man braces hard, barely holding his ground against the brutal impact. A young man fought tooth and nail against the crushing attack, realizing this world doesn't forgive mistakes. One wrong move and his health is gone. He checks his status and realizes he's only level 18, way below the usual level 50 needed to even face this kind of foe, and the dragon's divine lightning can end him in an instant, forcing him to stay locked in if he wants to live. Because even wounded, he refuses to quit, stitches himself back together, and channels every ounce of strength to keep going. Bending beneath a wave of raw magical power, he braces himself and steels his resolve, because he's about to face that terrifying foe again. The young man throws down multiple enhancement fields around himself in rapid succession, and with each one, his strength and abilities skyrocket. Then he surges earth magic straight into his weapon, lighting it up with raw power. They weaponize the lightning dragon's elemental weakness, gearing up for one final, decisive strike. Even with all that power pounding his body, he still has to juggle stacked skills he can barely control. The young man finishes his preparations, and then wham, his magic power skyrockets, amplified 1,000 times over, roaring with enough force to break loose and unleash everything. The dragon gathers power for yet another bone-crushing divine lightning strike, and the battlefield gets obliterated all over again. The young man steadies his stance, locks eyes with the attack, and swallows the fear, then hardens his resolve, ready to strike back even when the power crushing him feels unbeatable. Divine lightning slams down again, and this time the young man darts out of the way at the last second. With pure determination blazing in his eyes, he declares, "No more, this attack won't blindside me again," because he spots the same downward pattern every time, and he charges straight at the dragon's head to counter it. The protagonist just barely slips out of another bone-crushing strike. He yanks forward just as the ground blows apart around him. Smoke and shattered dust explode everywhere as, while that dragon hangs on the horizon, its crushing power bears down on him as he braces himself, readying for the next move. Dust erupts across the battlefield, swallowing the protagonist's sight. Calm as a blade, he studies the enemy's moves, then snaps into position before the dragon can even finish its next strike. The protagonist spots the dragon's next move, lightning race, a blazing straight-line strike, then realizes it's the same pattern as that drop-down divine lightning hit. He braces hard and forces himself to fight back, even as that insane speed and raw power crash over him. Through the dust and chaos, the protagonist clings to gut instinct and the dragon's attack rhythms etched in memory. Gripping his weapon so tight his knuckles went white. He snaps his focus into place and funnels his magic like a blade. He lined everything up and held his breath, ready to unleash his counterattack the second the timing was perfect. The protagonist braces under the brutal weight of his stacked upgrades, each one draining his magic and siphoning his life force, while pain and exhaustion slam him from every side. He knows this is his one shot at winning, so he shoves himself past every limit, harder and more real than the game ever felt. Through the smoke and thunderous roars, the dragon clenched its body, bracing for another brutal strike. The protagonist's power flares bright as he rockets forward, smashing through the distance to unleash his ultimate, deciding strike. Drenched in exhaustion and gasping for air, the protagonist clamps his weapon in a death grip, eyes bulging with pure, unshakable resolve. In front of him, the dragon unleashes a furious roar that shakes the air. As their clash hits the peak, the whole battlefield shudders, and the protagonist charges straight at a massive dragon head, acknowledging just how wildly unmatched their power really was. For now, he's stuck using only what he knows from the game, reading the creature's attack patterns like a cheat code to slip every strike. He knew a straight-up clash would do nothing, and the truth hit hard: no direct fight could ever work. The protagonist thrusts his staff to the sky, because right now, stacking is his only move. He pours out every upgrade he's got, and unleashes his deadliest attack in one final, decisive hit. The protagonist unleashes terrifying earth magic, and a massive boulder crashes down from above like a death sentence. With a surge of raw power, he slams it down in one brutal strike, wham, and the colossal boulder detonates against the dragon, crushing it in a single, devastating hit. A colossal boulder slams into the dragon, blasting the ground to pieces and swallowing it whole in a roar of rubble. As the dust finally clears, the protagonist stares, almost without meaning to, his mind racing as he wonders if that one crushing strike was truly enough to end the fight. When the dust finally settles, the protagonist locks eyes on the dragon still alive, Overhead, dark clouds churn and swirl, screaming that this isn't the end, it's the start of something way worse. He clocks it instantly. This is the dragon's ultimate weapon, a massive, blazing upgrade of divine lightning, the kind of last resort strike that doesn't just hit, it erases. The dragon hunches forward and unleashes its ultimate spell, carving a massive magic circle across the sky. Then the protagonist realizes it's the lightning strike of extinction. A devastating attack slams in, there's no dodging it. Then he realizes just how deadly his spell is, and his stomach drops because if it lands, nothing of him will be left. The massive magic circle blasts open the sky, and countless bolts of lightning hammer down like pure punishment, so hard the ground rips apart under the sheer force. And the protagonist stands right in the heart of the storm, steel in his spine as he braces for the inevitable hit coming his way. Lightning hammers down nonstop, locking every escape route in a deadly, crackling cage. The moment he clocks what the attack is doing, he realizes it's carving out an inescapable wall of total destruction, and there's only one move left: march straight into the overwhelming force. Frustration clawed at him, but he still couldn't end the dragon in one brutal strike, so the protagonist refused to quit. He scraped together the last of his fading magic and braced for a final, desperate blow. With the last scraps of strength left in his body, the protagonist hurls up another massive boulder, but it roars out at only a sliver of its true power. Clenching his resolve, he charges first, because he has to put the dragon down before that ultimate attack rips him out of the world. Then, barely standing and totally drained, he staggers and gasps after his final blow lands. As the dust settles, he spots the dragon smashed under those hulking boulders, and the tension finally slips out of his chest in a shaky, relieved sigh. Amid shattered boulders and choking smoke, the protagonist stands tall like the battle is already won. That colossal dragon crumples under the rubble, finally brought to its knees. As the final piece of its subjugation snapped into place, a brutal battle erupts as a ferocious tiger collides with another beast. A woman spots danger creeping in right before it can strike, right as a massive gorilla rockets forward with pure, brutal force. The creature snapped to a sudden stop, like something had just yanked its strings. Thrown off by a sudden interruption he didn't see coming. The woman clenches her weapon, flames roar to life around her, and she charges straight at the massive gorilla. With fierce resolve, she lunges straight in and slams head-on, forcing herself to clash against the beast's crushing power. With tigers closing in from all sides, she clamps down on her weapon and realizes, too late, she's vastly outnumbered. With fire burning in her eyes, she readies herself for a last-ditch stand, fully convinced this battle could be the one where everything ends. As the monsters vanish in a blink, Melia whips her head around, stunned and bursting with relief, because Eldo stumbles into view, battered but breathing, proving he actually crushed the threat. He finally realizes Melia's been stalling the beasts this whole time, and he blurts out an apology for showing up late. Eldor grins and admits he wiped out the raid boss, snapping the stampede right in its tracks, then drops proof, a huge stash of materials pulled straight from the fallen beast. Melia's jaw drops when she realizes this came from an S-rank monster, and that Eldo fought it all by himself just to keep everyone safe. With gratitude blazing in his eyes, Eldo thanks Melia, and when she vows she'll help with anything, he wastes no time asking her for a favor. He shocks her by asking her to take the credit for killing the raid boss and halting the stampede. Melia can barely process what she just heard, her mind reeling. Melia refuses to bask in the victory, insisting Eldo earned the recognition, and then Eldo lays out his reasoning. Their ranks keep them stuck, and her next leap forward would hit way harder than anything they can do right now. He tells her straight up that if she climbs the ranks it helps them both, then even pushes the idea that she should become a noble, because that would lock in his power. Melia grudgingly agrees to Aldo's plan, even though she doesn't want to. Swearing he'd rise to nobility and repay her debt, she admits it, because the man's strength is undeniable. She's baffled who lets a total novice crush S-rank monsters all by himself. Eldo just shrugs off her words like it's nothing. Melia leans in, grinning, and tells Eldo that his powers make him feel straight up out of this world. Even though she tosses it off fast like it's nothing, she straight up tells him she's got it under control. Eldo, a little on edge, quickly tells her to lock in their story before they step up to anyone else. Just as the townspeople steel themselves for the attack, they stare in shock. Those monsters suddenly stop, looking utterly lost, jittery, and scared. They blinked, and just like that, the horde that was about to crush them vanished without a trace, spilling into an unsettling silence behind him. Melia steps right in front of the gathered townsfolk. She swears she took down the S-rank dragon that reared itself from nowhere, and then breaks it down. When its source got smashed, the monsters just disappeared. Milia thrusts the dragon's horn forward like a trophy, shouting that her win is real, and the whole town goes silent, stunned that the flamespear could take down a foe like that all by herself. Sensing the sheer power blasting out of that horn, they buy her story. This is exactly why the stampede finally died, but even then, some people still doubt whether she pulled it off on her own. The townspeople erupt in cheers, finally breathing out in pure relief. They cheered for making it out alive, and they crown Milia the hero who dragged them to safety. The guild branch manager strides in, stunned by what he's just witnessed, and admits he never once believed anyone could take down the monster perched on the ceiling pillar. The guildmaster tells them that the sealed monster was believed to be unbeatable, so those barriers held firm for generations, guarding everyone like it was the only thing standing between them and doom. Milia gets showered with thanks for saving everyone, then right when she's catching her breath they demand, "Where's Eldo?" Caught off guard, she blurts that he evacuated, so the guildmaster instantly chalks it up to Eldo being too green for S-rank fights, even if he's got the strength. Milia got cornered with non-stop questions about how she beat the dragon, and when she finally cracked, she admitted she barely remembers a thing, then shrugged it off and blamed the whole battle. Meanwhile, Eldo lurks outside the city, praying everything finally goes smooth. While everyone's celebrating, they shower Milia with praise, yet Eldo slips away in silence, apologizing from the shadows. Milia tells him she aimed straight for the dragon's horns, claiming they were its weak spot, and then she unleashes every skill she has to smash them off. The guild manager stares in disbelief, because pulling off something this rare and risky is no small feat. Then he praises her courage and sharp judgment like she just proved something huge. He decides to march straight to the guild leader and brag about her win, making it clear she's the one who crushed the S-rank monster, while Milia grits her teeth and straps on a grateful smile, hiding the truth. The guild manager stares at Milia's so-called feat and admits it screams S-rank, then immediately says the final call belongs to the higher-ups, not him, and he demands the dragon's horn as proof. Milius nods and hands it over. Still thanking her, he swears he'll back her with everything he's got, but she has to hold her ground until the guild leader delivers the final verdict. The guild manager drops into a deep bow of pure gratitude, thanking Milia for every bit of effort. She stays cool as a blade, nodding along and owning every word he throws her way. Then she strides out of the building with a calm, unshakable look, because everyone's starting to realize her success was nothing but deception. Eldo and Milia cross paths again after everything goes down. She rushes in with a heartfelt apology, drowning in guilt for taking the credit, but Eldo stops her cold and tells her the truth. It actually pushed him closer to his goal. Milia makes him a promise she'll repay him no matter what. While Eldo locks in on leveling up and grabs even more requests, he's hunting for stronger trials. Elder looks back on how his mindset has flipped from what it used to be, and Milia nods along in full agreement. Right after that, a stranger rushes in and tells Milia all about Elias, the town where everything is about to change. A brutal wave of monsters crashes out of the nearby great forest, smashing their defenses, and leaving them begging for submission requests nonstop. Milia decides to stay back for the assessment. While Eldo's urged to march straight toward Elias, a storm of requests is waiting right there for him. He nods in agreement and it hits him. This is the last time they're together for now, because their paths are about to split. Eldo looks back on everything Milia's helped him with since they met, and pure gratitude burns bright in his heart. Even though that time together was way too short. They traded heartfelt thanks, locked in the bond they'd forged, then tore themselves away to go their separate ways. Before they split up, Eldo cracks a joke, telling Milia he'll need her to take the credit for his future feats, then he totally flusters her before parting ways. Then they shared heartfelt farewells, tearing up the moment as they parted ways with sincerity. Milia sent him off with a warm wish, and Eldo shot back, promising he'd take care of everything. Eldo and Milia locked hands in a solid handshake, then split apart with real respect, and a promise that they'd meet again. Eldo snaps into motion, fueled by pure determination, eyes locked on the road ahead as Elias braces to carry their journey forward. Deep in the great Elias forest, the air turns heavy and deadly. Skulls litter the ground like a warning you can't ignore. A feral tiger rockets through the forest, eyes locked on its prey as it stalks through the thick, crushing undergrowth. A ferocious tiger barrels through the forest, then a storm of arrows and brutal weapons slams into it, and it crumples under the wounds. As it drops, a massive foot stomps down and lunges forward, uncovering the hunter hiding in plain sight. The tiger crumples in defeat on the ground, lying there as a band of men closes in on its body. One of them lunges forward and grabs the beast by the head, and rips it away, flexing their power over the fallen predator. A towering, monstrous warrior grips two men in his hands and brutally smashes them into the ground. Ripping through them like they were paper, he stands towering in the pouring rain, roaring with raw rage and unstoppable power, proving his terrifying dominance. The protagonist rockets over the mountains, clutching his map in the sky, but no matter how he scans from above, the place won't show up, so he drops down, lands hard, and hunts for it on foot. Pushing through the forest, he spots something tucked behind the trees, and then it hits him. That's why the sky couldn't reveal it. The protagonist finally hits the suspension bridge, the only route into the city, and launches into the crossing. A sharp voice suddenly yells stop, and it jolts him out of his tracks. The protagonist barrels up to the gates of Ilias, right on the edge of something huge. Then they pin him down, demanding to know his rank and what he's really here for. He straight up answers, "I'm a D rank." He said he showed up because the monster subjugation requests kept piling in. Then the guard cut him off and said things have changed for real right now. The details he had were already stale. Then the guard snapped the truth. In the last few days, a massive outbreak of ravenous ogres hit, and they're high-level B-rank monsters. So terrifying because they're built on strength and brain power, capable of slipping into human-sized armor and fighting with deadly strategy, turning battles against multiple of them into an absolute nightmare. With so many gathered, it screams one thing: some king ogre is probably the one calling the shots. The protagonist remembers how he crushed a lightning dragon by stacking boosts and unleashing one full-power strike. But then he realizes that same tactic will get wrecked by ogres, because they'll swarm him in numbers and drown him in sheer weight. He can't shake the idea that an even bigger monster is calling the shots, the Emperor Ogre, looming over them like a death sentence, and he knows the danger is real. He pushes ahead with razor-cautious steps, hating every second he's been split from Milia. The guard leans in and tells Ilias, ogres didn't start out in the towns, they lived deep inside the lands, and they never once crossed into human territory. As their ranks swelled, they pushed their hunts farther and farther, driving the other monsters straight toward the city. That sudden turn sent a swarm of adventurers charging in, desperate to take down the creatures. Guards stop him cold and yell that the forest depths are a death trap. Hungry ogres have already ripped into countless adventurers. They can't drag anyone into danger, but they push the same message hard: stay sharp, be careful. He nods, swallows his nerves, and gears up to head deeper anyway. The protagonist strides into the city, and the place feels dead quiet, like everyone's on edge, anxious, and pulling away instead of living. He finally gets it: the ogres are marching in from the other side of the river, and regular adventurers stand no chance against that kind of threat. And if they don't move right now, the ogres are going to tear through everything, and wipe out the city too. The protagonist bursts into the Ilias Guild branch. Chasing that tip about the open requests, he barrels into the building. He's itching to see how many tasks are waiting for him. Once he steps inside the guild, he spots a bunch of requests posted everywhere. As he studies the items, a guild member strides up, grills him about his skills and what he's aiming for, and after he gives that humble answer, the member immediately slides him a specific request. A guild staffer lays it out. The anything subjugation lets adventurers hunt any monster they want and bring back proof to seal the quest. With ogres slaughtering everything in their path, monster numbers have started to thin out, but running into an ogre is still terrifyingly likely, and the protagonist realizes just how desperate this world has become. The guild staff begs the protagonist to take the job, yelling that the council's dangling insane rewards if he steps up. He accepts the request on the spot, convinced it'll be way more efficient than a normal mission, because this time he gets to hunt freely. With that, he's ready to bolt out the door right away, while someone hammers home one warning: don't you dare act recklessly. The hero storms out of the guild, marches past the gate, and the guard clocks him instantly, then demands to know if he actually took a job. Nodding like he means it, the protagonist heads straight for the forest, only for the guard to shout that he should back off if things turn deadly, and he swears he will. Then he crosses that suspension bridge again. The protagonist steps off the bridge and into the forest, bracing himself for whatever horrors or challenges are waiting ahead. With pure grit in his chest, he kicks off the hunt. Steeled for whatever lurked ahead, the hero storms through the forest, only to come up empty, no monsters in sight. Suspecting the ogres already swallowed them whole, he clamps down on his panic, steels his nerves, and readies invisibility plus a magic search to sniff out any danger lurking nearby. The protagonist locks eyes with a wolf, and the moment turns deadly. But right before it all explodes into action. Right as the moment hits, an ogre grabs the beast out of nowhere. Then the monster's full terror crashes onto the scene, towering over everything, looming like a nightmare. The protagonist suddenly squares up with an ogre face to face, which still grips the wolf it caught, calm as ever. Right in front of him, the creature tears into its prey with brutal hunger, and the whole air turns electric, like the battle is about to explode any second. Out of nowhere, the ogre hurls a savage, pitch-black blast straight at the protagonist. Reacting at lightning speed, he snaps his weapon up and slams the strike aside. Wham! The impact detonates in a burst of force as the battle keeps escalating. The yogurt barrels in and blasts forward with a brutal, no-question punch. But the protagonist snaps out a magical guard in an instant. The barrier flares with light and snaps into place, blocking the ogre's swing at the last second. The ogre rams headfirst through a giant tree with raw brute strength, blasting debris everywhere. The blast slams the protagonist to the ground, but he stays conscious, stunned as he finally feels just how terrifyingly strong that ogre really is. As the ogre winds up and hurls that colossal axe straight for him. Right as danger hits, the protagonist snaps a reaction into motion, casting a spell that fires off a sticky bomb to pin the creature down before it crushes him again. That sticky bomb clung to the ogre like a curse, yanked it tight against the tree, and slipped in right when the opening appeared. The protagonist slams down a brutal attack and detonates the spell in a blazing explosion that lights everything up. The protagonist slams his power down and unleashes the flame pillar. The ogre gets swallowed by a wall of fire, and it howls in pure agony as the flames tear through its body. While the protagonist stays locked in, eyes sharp, refusing to bend or break. When the dust finally settles, the ogre is left scorched and crumpled on the ground, and the protagonist stands over the fallen monster like, "That's it, I won." He clocks this as the very first win of many more to come. Right as the beaten ogre tries to bolt, the protagonist clocks its plan to yell for reinforcements, and strikes first, fast as lightning. He pours magic into his palm and blasts a blazing fireball right at his enemy, smashing the monster hard before it even gets a chance to slip away. The blazing fireball slammed into the ogre head-on, swallowed its skull in roaring flames, and then it crumpled dead onto the ground. Only then did the protagonist realize how terrifying it would have been if that thing had managed to rally reinforcements. With Millionot by his side, the protagonist decides he'll have to ration his manus. He won't fire off his deadliest skills unless the situation truly demands it. Then he finally looks down at the fallen ogre. He can't shake the thought his flame pillar should have obliterated it, so now he's left staring at one brutal question. Is this monster stronger than they ever imagined, or is there something darker happening behind the scenes? While the protagonist keeps his guard up, a blast of rushing footsteps slams into his ears and snaps his focus. Suddenly, a whole pack of massive wolves tore out of the forest like a wave of pure danger, racing straight at him, coming in like a freight train. It left him reeling, caught completely off guard by their sudden arrival. The wolves thunder past the protagonist, snarling nowhere, striking nothing, just steamrolling right past like he didn't even exist. He clocks that they're running from something else entirely, but he can't figure out what would have whipped them into that kind of pure panic. A massive club crashes into a tree right next to the protagonist, missing him by a hair. Reeling from that near hit, he snaps his head up. Something brutal is creeping out of the forest shadows. The moment the protagonist steps forward, the forest erupts, ogres surge out from every side, weapons in hand, and the circle closes like a trap. Even with the odds stacked against him, he stiffens his courage because he just clocked it. His situation has turned way more lethal. The protagonist size-ups the scene fast, clocking just how insanely agile those bulky ogres are. He realizes getting boxed in spells doom, so he whips around, hunts for a way out, and spots a skinny gap through the rocks, one that could flip the whole fight in his favor. The protagonist grabs the moment, barrels toward the tight path, and decides to bait the ogres into his trap, so he acts crushed and desperate, screaming for help like he's already doomed. As the ogres sneer with full confidence and sprint right after him, he bolts into that tight passage, and the ogres chase him in hot pursuit. The protagonist springs his trap right on cue. Flames explode forward, shutting the road down with a roaring wall of fire. Shut the monsters in tight and sliced off every path they had to run. The protagonist unleashes his whole game plan, blasting Flame Pillar X5 to spark a whole chain of scorching infernos right inside that tight path. The ogres get swallowed by the trap in an instant, and they can't so much as blink before his fiery assault pummels them, burning them down as they're stuck inside the wall of flames. The protagonist drops his finishing move. He hurls a massive fireball that tears through the blazing corridor, and delivering the coup de grace to erase them for good. Ogres burst into flames, staggered and crumpled to the earth one after another, until the battlefield was just a grim field of fallen bodies. The protagonist squares up at arm's length with a towering ogre. Both of them stagger through the wreckage, battered and bruised, while roaring flames and choking smoke close in around them. After he wipes out the ogre, the protagonist slams his sword away from danger and realizes the blade's strength is way beyond the others. He stares at what's coming, feels the danger creeping closer, and steels his heart for the next fight. The protagonist snaps on a magic search spell, sweeps the area with it, and realizes there's not a soul anywhere nearby. Then he whips out magic, blotting his presence from sight, so he moves through the shadows completely unseen. Hidden under a cloak of magic, the protagonist. It slips into the forest and pushes ahead with iron determination, while far-off explosions rattle the whole area. The protagonist marches past the broken bodies of beaten ogres, his eyes sweeping over more than 20 corpses. He checks his mana and feels it almost wiped clean. He snaps back to the city before his strength runs completely dry. The protagonist made it back safe and sound, shocking the guards and the guild staff. They figure he dodged the danger on purpose. But then he reveals he wiped out about 25 ogres himself, leaving every single person in total shock, staring like they couldn't believe their eyes. Not a single guild member believes he took down the ogres, because he's got zero proof, and that silence screams lie. With a calm smile, he unveils his true skill. He yanks the corpses out of his magic storage, and shock hits hard as everyone stares at the ogres, bodies piling up in front of them, defeated at last. The guild staff erupts in panic, staring at the proof like it might explode, and finally snaps, calling the branch manager. The protagonist worries he may have drawn way too much attention, but then he remembers Millie's advice, make sure you stand out. Soon after, a calm, authoritative woman steps in and lays it out. In this guild, rookies get stomped on, so you'd better stand out, pull your weight, and earn your way up the ranks. Guild staff rush back and order him to come with her, because the guild hall is packed and the warehouse has room. He nods in agreement, and side by side, they burst outside. Eventually, she finally reaches that massive storage facility and starts gearing up to take on the ogres he hauled in. Inside the warehouse, the adventurer stared at the huge space that used to swarm with monsters. Before long, branch manager Royce storms in, shocked to find someone who can actually take down ogres, and the moment he meets them, the protagonist throws his name out, Eld, an adventurer. Royce braces to see Eld's results, and they clear the space for the big demonstration. Eld slams his skill to life, and the defeated ogres get yanked back, straight into the warehouse. Royce stands there in pure shock, staring at that massive pile, stunned that every single one of them got wiped out in just one day. Royce's jaw drops at this wild ability. He's never heard of anything like it, and he can't find a single trace of it in the guild's records. Then Eld leans in and tells him it's called magic storage, a power that lets him stash items inside another dimension. Royce, drowning in shock, starts weighing whether to blast it to headquarters, because this feels like a discovery of the century. The guild sets out to test Eld's rare skill, and once it's proven, roll it out to the world, promising him serious rewards. Even though he doesn't care about the money, Eld nods along, believing it'll help other adventurers level up and let the guild tackle bigger, scarier threats. He even treats it like a stealth move, so every time he uses it, nobody's watching him, and then the agency manager demands, "Show me Eld's card." He's stunned when he finds out he's only classified as a beginner, so he fires off questions about the mistake, and Eld just shrugs, explaining they've been treating him like a newbie. Even with that real wisdom hiding in his gift, the class didn't light up for him, like the world refused to recognize him as a mage once he started using his abilities. But the manager makes it clear, only the class rep has the power to officially set the charge, even though before this, you could tweak it. After Cardinal George's rise, the rules tightened fast. Now only a regular gem counts and nothing else. The manager slams the door on any more help, and he finally admits defeat. When Cardinal George's name hit his ears, it instantly sparked deja vu, like he'd heard it before, and dread crawled in as he wondered if this guy was behind turning superior jobs into something inferior. He swears that one day he'll finally confront him, and whatever answer he gets, he'll make a serious decision on the spot. The protagonist leans on everything he's learned from BBO, using it like a secret weapon to turn the whole situation in his favor. When the guild manager can't fix the problem with his job classification, he throws him a lifeline, offering a promotion recommendation instead. And just like that, the boy locks in 2 of the 3 recommendations he needs to climb to the next rank. The guild manager can't hide it. He's stunned by how rare it is for the capital's branch to send a recommendation. The protagonist only remembers finishing one single request. Still, he can't shake the fear that Mina's pulling the strings, yet with this fresh recommendation in hand, he finally ticks every box for the next rank and straight up asks for the promotion. The branch manager straight up admits the job-based ranking system is rigged, but insists the protagonist's wins are too wild to be stuck at C rank, then swears that if he keeps racking up results, they can finally petition headquarters to bump his rank higher. And the protagonist finally buys the explanation, hook, line, and sinker. The protagonist boldly declares they'll wipe out every ogre in the area, and the others stare back in stunned disbelief, like, wait, is that even possible? Even so, he knew this would be a huge win, so determination slammed into him, and he resolved to go for it. The branch manager praises the protagonist's grind, and then everyone starts whispering that wiping out the ogres might let them stay right here. So why does this urgency feel like it's burning right under the surface? The protagonist realizes the ogres aren't the real problem at all. There's something bigger hiding underneath. But the evacuation plan was already locked in and ready to go. The capital threatens to dump the city and evacuate everyone unless the ogres get wiped out, so the people have to relocate fast. The whole town, especially the elders, cowers at the thought of getting attacked the moment the move starts. The branch manager finally admits the real reason. This whole plan is built mostly for the capital's convenience, not the locals' safety. The protagonist realizes the capital didn't just ignore them, it outright refused help when they were asked and basically dared the town to deal with it on its own. The branch manager breaks it down. The evacuation plan isn't for everyone, it's there to protect the nobles. While Elias is trapped inside Count Mega's territory, his rivals unleash monsters to smash his control, then snatch his land for themselves. The protagonist leans in as the branch manager lays it out. Count Magus is adored by the common folk, but nobles spit venom and can't stand him. His fierce opposition to the discrimination that labeled inferior jobs like they were worthless. With backers like Cardinal George's, he suddenly got tangled in a brutal power struggle against the nobility. The protagonist learns the truth. Count Magus hauled in inferiors from all across the country, handing out jobs and sheltering them like they mattered. Stinging hatred from the nobles only pushed him closer, because he knew exactly how to turn it to his advantage. He steps up to back the city, risking everything to stop its evacuation, and in the process, he wins the locals over for good. When night falls, the protagonist sprawls in his room, staring at the ceiling as the weight of his huge responsibility crushes his chest. Then he clenches his resolve and forces himself to sleep, because he'll need every last bit of mana for what's coming next. The protagonist reels from the day's brutal fights, realizing he was one bad second away from dying. Stretched out on his bed, he stared at the ceiling and realized he only gets one life, so under that moonlit night, he vowed to be way more cautious tomorrow. Night falls, a carriage rattles up, and a cloaked figure strides straight toward the building like it has a secret mission. With pure determination in their eyes, they pound on the door and declare, loud and clear, that they're back. Count Migas, it's me. Late at night, a messenger races to Count Migas and confirms the relief supplies hit their mark. Then he drops shocking news. This inferior adventurer somehow pulled off the impossible by slaying a sea dragon, and the Count can't ignore how huge that is. Even the mighty Maxia company is watching closely, because they learn the adventurer they hired is just a fresh-faced novice, a Count Magus. Hearing about the novice adventurer's wild feats, he can't wait to meet the guy face-to-face, someday. While the boy sinks into rest, totally oblivious to the stairs closing in, Count Migas weighs the novice's raw potential, praying he'll turn into the beacon of hope their land is craving. At dawn, the boy bursts outside with fresh energy, mana totally restored in his body. After he's sure he actually rested well, he's about to. He shocks the whole crowd by boldly announcing he's going straight to the ogre's nest to investigate it himself. The boy rockets up into the sky, instantly blowing the crowd's minds, because they finally realize he's flying straight for the ogre's nest. Soaring over the forest, the boy scans for the ogre's stronghold. Realizing this brawl won't stop, no, not until their boss is finally smashed. Down the line, a crew of adventurers huddles up, bracing to throw their strength behind whatever comes next. The boy rockets over the endless forest, eyes peeled for the enemy's base, grinning like he refuses to quit, because if he can't find it fast, his mana is going to run dry. The boy suddenly spots something weird tucked away deep inside the thick, tangled forest. He snaps to attention, rushes down, slams the landing, and wastes no time gearing up to dig deeper. The boy wraps himself in magic invisibility, vanishing in an instant, and tiptoes toward the cliff edge with nerves on a razor's edge. His eyes blazed, locked onto everything waiting just ahead. From the shadows where he watched and waited, the boy stumbles on a towering ogre lurking at the base of a giant tree, with little creatures circling all around it. He snaps to it this is the enemy's stronghold, and he stumbled right into it when the boy spots a giant creature and calls it out, a ravenous ogre. Seeing it, there was all the proof he needed. an ogre's nest had to be lurking nearby. The boy snaps that he's found the ogre's nest, then wastes no time. He's turning back right now to gear up and get ready. The moment he crashes back into the village, everything changes. Right then, out of nowhere, something hits him hard. A furious mob of townspeople blocked his way, and they weren't letting him pass. The boy races back to the village, and his jaw drops when he spots a tense crowd packed together, waiting like something about to explode. When he finally asks what's going on, the guild girl hesitates, then starts spilling the whole story, piece by shaky piece, leading straight to a jaw-dropping reveal tied to those earlier warnings. A squad of armed men storms into the village, shouting that they've come to evacuate every last person, starting with Ilias. Armed men step forward and drop the cathedral of the capital's shocking request right in front of them, giving them full permission to evacuate people however they had to. They swear their orders don't just come from someone, they carry the full weight and authority of the capital itself. With guns raised, the armed men bark that the villagers must get out, right now. They declared the order unbreakable, and the townsfolk erupted in protest, terrified of the ogres waiting beyond their walls and suspicious that the capital would dare issue a command this cruel. The mercenaries waved off their worries, swaggered in like they'd seen nothing, and snarled that the villagers were just making it all up. Eld drops the truth, he wiped out the ogres circling them already, so that's why the mercenaries never spotted a single one. Still, they shoved the villagers into action, forcing everyone to get ready to leave. The branch manager frets, knowing that going against the capital's orders could spell disaster, and he fears Count Magus's situation might spiral out of control too. Eld realizes they're trapped in a nightmare of a situation. The mercenaries fumed as the villagers stalled, standing there frozen, not knowing what they were supposed to do next. One of the mercenaries snaps into a furious rage, yelling at them to move faster, scum, and snarled threats of force just to get them moving. One mercenary flew into the pile, smashing through crates and barrels with pure violence. Food and supplies flew out across the ground like a desperate scramble mid-chaos. He unleashed pure aggression on the villagers, looming over them like a threat, then watched in cold silence as they crumbled in panic when their food supplies got smashed, sobbing in total despair. One of the mercenaries sneers at them, laughing like a villain, and says it won't matter, because they'll just toss it aside anyway. Everyone's shattered, pointing to the fact that the food was a prized gift from Lord Magus, while the sheer cruelty of it all has them reeling and shaken. The hero snaps a spell called suspension asterisk, and the brute gets yanked and pinned in the air, frozen midair the instant it hits. Shocked out of his mind, the man suddenly blasts off the ground, flailing like he's lost in freefall while the villagers stare, wide-eyed, terrified. The brute's head crashes down with a brutal slam, his face twists in raw pain and panic while he's yanked high in the air. The other mercenaries jerk their heads up, faces pale with pure shock and terror. When the hero finally realizes the insane power he just unleashed, he calmly flicks his magic and brings that brute down for good without a scratch, leaving him twitching on the ground, completely knocked out and unable to move. The mercenaries gawk in total shock, their faces twisted as their brains can't even make sense of what just hit them. The protagonist surges forward, refusing to sit back another second. He locks eyes with everyone and promises, "Don't worry, I'll handle this." He calmly introduced himself like some brand new novice adventurer, while the mercenaries mocked him, roaring with laughter at the idea that someone ranked that low could ever stop them. The protagonist smirks and calmly needles his opponent, bragging that they're even weaker than a brand new novice. His calm, confident words ignite rage in the man's chest, and he lashes out in fury. But the boy won't back down. He swears through and through that he's telling the truth. Rage tore through him as he swung his weapon and unleashed a brutal, bone-splitting slash. He slammed the ground with a thunderous impact and charged the protagonist, rage burning hot in his veins. The enemy's blade slammed to a stop inches from the protagonist, and he didn't even flinch. The man's stomach dropped when the boy, calm as ever, called out his weakness like it was obvious. He admitted he didn't have the power to shield anyone from those ogres, and the hero immediately saw right through his lie. When he finally understood he never meant to protect a soul, disbelief hit him like a truck, stunned, off guard, and reeling. The man panicked, then the boy didn't hesitate and ended him with one decisive strike. The protagonist crushed his opponents without breaking a sweat, proving they were nowhere near strong enough to defend anyone. Standing his ground, he snapped that Ilias no longer needed to be evacuated, as he vowed to handle the ogre threat himself. The intruders stumbled away in defeat, swearing they'd come back for revenge. The protagonist waved off their threat like it was nothing, and told the guild to pin it on a wandering adventurer acting alone, then apologized for stepping in and handling it himself. The branch manager seethed, furious that higher-ups had yanked him into following orders he never wanted to obey. While the protagonist could feel the evacuation was a trap, waiting for him to step in. He spilled the truth about an artificial monster, magic poison, a nasty artifact that, once buried, snaps every nearby monster into a full-on berserk frenzy. Since his very first battle, the protagonist had watched monsters level up, growing stronger, meaner, and way more savage, and he could only conclude that sure, the ogres would eventually get wiped out. Their rampage would tear through every last bit of their territory, until they had no choice but to barrel straight into human lands. That perfectly timed evacuation order hit him like a clue. He was sure this whole mess was staged on purpose. The protagonist snapped that the order from the capital was probably just a bluff, part of some bigger trap cooked up by the enemy trying to take down Count Magus. He was dead sure Cardinal Georges was the mastermind. Only someone with that kind of scale and influence could pull off a plan like this. Even though he dressed it up like a guess, he demanded total secrecy over that suspicion, because once people realized what it could mean, their jaws just dropped at how far their enemies might actually go. The protagonist leans back and admits the truth, assume the worst, and you'll never get blindsided. Then his mind flashes back to what happened in BBO. Only one crew can forge that magic poison, the Forbidden Art users from the Garden of Despair, and if Cardinal Georgius is tied to them, then the world isn't just in trouble, it's sprinting straight toward ruin. After the dust settles from the fight, the protagonist marches straight to the branch manager and begs for a favor. Getting ready to meet Count Magus for the first time. The manager freezes for a beat, shoots a warning that the Count clashes hard with Cardinal Georgius, then turns around and insists Count Magus will greet him like family. So the protagonist steels himself and decides to face Count Magus anyway, risks and all. Determined, he declares he won't let Cardinal George run wild and do whatever he pleases unchecked. The guild branch manager beams and says, a lot of folks would have jumped at the chance to back the protagonist's move, me included, when he chose to stand with Count Magus. He lays it out, most guild officials are fuming because Cardinal George messed with the job system. He vows to make sure the protagonist gets a warm welcome, and he's ready to back him up with whatever he needs. The hero storms into the village and demands a massive supply of oil, then when they press him for why. He calmly slips out his real plan and with chilling ease declares he's going to burn the forest. The moment the villager even thinks about torching the forest, panic slams into them. But he snaps back that he's not trying to torch the whole forest, he's only here to burn the ogre's nest. With a breathless sigh of relief, the villager nods and sprints to grab the oil, while the protagonist sharpens up and readies for the fight ahead. Villagers haul barrels of monster oil so flammable it's basically a fuse, and with their help, the protagonist stuffs it into his magic storage like it's gone for good. Even though he's stunned by how it all clicks, they jump in and help him, and suddenly everything runs way faster. The protagonist calmly stashes every last drop of oil in his magic storage, and the villagers are blown away. Even though they worry nightfall could make everything risky, he shrugs it off and says his night vision skill actually makes moving around way more convenient now. He gives them a quick thanks, then snaps into motion and gets ready to head out. The protagonist breaks down how ogres usually hunker down at night, so it's the perfect setup for an ambush, then admits he can't help worrying a little. After calming the villagers down, he bolts out into the road, ready to move, but still keeping one eye on every shadow. LD's rockets into the sky, eyes locked on his mission, determined to reach it no matter what. The villagers watch him walk out, pinning all their hopes on his shoulders, then shout encouragement like a lifeline, fully trusting he'll pull it off. El reached the giant tree where the ogres lived, then spotted a few guards posted outside. He snaps his magic on, scans the battlefield, and pins the enemy's exact locations. Then he's ready to strike with his next move. Eld spots dozens of ogres packed in the nest, and right in the middle, an ogre king towering over them. With his plan locked in, he yanks out his magic storage and starts dumping oil everywhere, setting up his move to erase them all, no mercy. Eld drifts in the air and unleashes a roaring torrent of oil, flooding the giant tree roots where the ogre's nest is tucked away. The liquid raced across the ground like a warning flare, setting the perfect battleground for his massive attack. Eld gears up for his next move, then torching the ogre's nest like a match to a powder keg. As he rockets through the air with breakneck speed, he spots an ogre gripping a torch below, and he doesn't hesitate for a second. He plummets downward at breakneck speed, slamming into the monster before it even has time to react. Eldland crashes a devastating punch straight into the ogre's face, blasting it backward through the air like a wrecking ball. The creature slams into the ground with a bone-rattling crash. and the torch snaps to life, blazing straight into the oil-soaked roots. Boom. Then a roaring inferno erupts, races through the roots like wildfire, and swallows the whole area. Eld watches the flames swallow the ogre's nest, and the sheer fury knocks the breath out of him. Turns out the oil is way more potent than he ever imagined. Blazing flames swallow the whole ogre's nest, and as the fire roars through it, Eld keeps a sharp eye on them, because he knows they'll scramble to escape. The ground starts pounding with brutal thumps as the ogres sprint toward an opening, desperate to escape the wildfire, and Eld braces himself, waiting to cut them down the moment they spill out. When they finally burst through in pure panic, Eld doesn't even flinch. He just smirks because the flames are doing the heavy lifting, burning them up without draining a drop of his mana. To crank the chaos to maximum, he hurls sticky bombs right into their path. Eld sets a deadly snare, trapping those fleeing ogres and spinning them into total chaos as they stumble, slip, and crash headfirst into the mess. Then Eld unleashes his magic. He finished his spell, and with a burst of magic, the ground seemed to sing as a colossal boulder slammed into place above the battlefield. He rips off a brutal attack and slams the massive rock down on the terrified ogres, sending them scrambling in panic, crushing everything in its path like an unstoppable tidal wave. Eld slams the final touch on his plan, sealing the yogurt's escape with a giant boulder. With one last savage shove, he slams it shut, sealing the path tight, and leaving the monsters trapped inside the roaring, burning forest. Eld stands his ground, staring the Ogre King straight in the eyes, and when it clicks, he locks onto his real goal: beat this brutal powerhouse and take down the monster that's been controlling everyone. The Ogre King locks his gaze onto Eld from across the battlefield. Then he tears into the remains of his fallen comrades, devouring their flesh to fuel his own power and get stronger. Eld clocks the horrifying change with wide, razor-sharp eyes, and then the Ogre King fires off a brutal energy blast, ripping straight through the burning forest. Eld shoots into action immediately. Jolting upward into the sky, he dodged the deadly strike with pure instinct, barely dodging the crushing impact before it could swallow everything. Eld flashes back to everything he learned from BBO, and suddenly he truly understands how monsters fight. Unlike that predictable lightning dragon, the Ogre King twists every attack to match the battlefield around him. With a savage stance, the ogre digs its claws into the ground and braces to unleash a crushing, game-ending attack. The Ogre King slams the ground with a brutal roar, hurling huge rocks everywhere, and Eld braces like, "Oh no, this is way worse than I thought." He barely dodges as the debris scattered everywhere, his jaw tight, eyes locked with pure determination, while the Ogre King stood over it all, fists clenched like he was ready to crush the world. Prepares yet another brutal, crushing attack as Elda squares up, staring down the unstoppable threat head-on. The Ogre King slams the ground with a monstrous roar, and rocks explode into the air like shrapnel. As Eld rockets into the sky and starts hoarding mana, he whips a raging fireball into existence, then swings it down to blast that giant monster right from above. A blazing fireball crashes into the Ogre King's face, blasting the air apart with a thunderous explosion. But the creature just wipes the burns off like it's nothing, grinning so menacingly you'd swear that attack barely even touched it. Eld realizes regular hits won't faze the Ogre King. His power has been supercharged by the demon's poison, and the fight feels hopeless from the start. He steels himself and shows his hand. He didn't come empty-handed, because he's got a plan to fight back against this power. With the wind lifting him, Eld rockets through the sky in a blur. He slammed the Ogre King with a perfectly aimed blow. He snatches the opening and crushes it into pure power, gathering it all in his hand. Eldavant's geared up to unleash his next decisive strike against the Ogre Ray. Eld outsmarts the Ogre King, using the monster's massive size and sleepy slowness to cut him down, smashing from the inside despite the demon's deadly poison power-up. He skimmed across the wind like lightning, darting in and out to dodge every strike and catch the enemy off guard. Once the fight was over, he declared the forest troubles handled for now. After he crushed the Ogre King, Eld looks up and watches a glowing magic circle click into place above him. He's stunned because just after he kills the boss, a whole new one gets summoned to take their place. The summoning circle erupts and out steps a far mightier threat, an Ogre Emperor. Eld snaps to it, his luck just flipped, and now he's staring down an opponent way more dangerous than he ever bargained for. The Ogre Emperor slams down with jaw-dropping force, crushing everything in his path, shattering the earth under his feet. Eld braced himself, feeling the brutal weight of his new opponent's power slam into the air. Eld twists out at the last second, barely escaping the crushing blow. He sprang onto higher ground and from the safety of the trees, watched the Ogre Emperor claw his way out of the wreckage. Its power hasn't faded a bit, then Eld feels it. Something's off, and King Ogres and Emperor Ogres are absolutely not supposed to show up together. Certain someone's interfering from the shadows. He vows to stop whoever's calling in boss-class monsters, right now. He locks his eyes on the towering Ogre Emperor in front of him. The Yoga Emperor bellows with raw power, blasting out a surge of energy that rattles the whole battlefield. Eld braces, fists up, as the crushing force drops from above and he charges straight into it. The Ogre Emperor suddenly unveils that he can tap into detection, magic anytime he wants. Without wasting a second, the monster spots Eld and rockets forward with pure, crushing force in a charge that hits like a disaster. The Ogre Emperor slams down with pure, bone-crushing brute force. The ground shook hard like something enormous was coming for it. Eld barely slips out of the way before disaster crashes down. He locked his focus on smashing the monster's crushing power head-on. The earth under Eld starts splitting open, and he yanks himself back in a rush before he gets swallowed. The Ogre Emperor hammers the ground with brutal force, ripping through everything in a wave of destruction, and Eld can only stare in stunned shock. Breathing hard, he braces himself, feeling every ounce of his opponent's crushing power bearing down on him. The earth shakes as the Ogre Emperor detonates out of nowhere with pure, explosive power. Ramming through brutal terrain, he tore after Eld. Elder snaps into action in a split second. The giant barrels toward him with relentless fury, and the brutal, destructive power of his opponent feels like it'll tear everything apart. Eld knocks a blazing fire arrow, hurls it toward the ogre, and scorches the monster in flames just long enough to buy himself time. Then the Ogre Emperor snaps his hands together and smothers the attack before it even lands, and Eld just stands there, utterly stunned, because his plan collapses on the spot. The ogre, fueled by the demon's poison, surges in power, so much so it starts looking just like the King Ogre, while Eldesteady refuses to panic. He pulls strength from his game know-how and hard-earned real-world fighting experience, then steps up ready to smash straight through the challenge. Eld hurls a barrage of fiery arrows straight at the Ogre Emperor. The monster slams itself between the flames, but Eld stands there ice-calm. Then a confident grin spreads across his face as he readies the next move. Eld rips the air open and unleashes a gigantic pillar of flames. The Ogre Emperor is swallowed whole in the blast, yet the hit barely scratches him. It snaps the monster in place, and Eld finally gets the precious seconds he needs to plot his next move. The Ogre Emperor rips straight through the roaring flames, still blazing hot, yet completely unshaken. Eld freezes when the monster smirks at him, and that creepy grin screams, "I'm still standing," proving how tough and dangerous it really is. Eld grows seethed as the Ogre Emperor shrugged off every strike. As he weighs his choices, one spell clicks in his mind, and suddenly he sees a way to flip the whole fight. And spots the one escape route out of this nightmare. Eld hesitates just for a split second. He gritted his teeth, knowing that casting the spell would rob the boss of its precious drop, right as he stood face to face with the towering Ogre Emperor. He finally gets it. Survival beats loot every time, and he snaps into action, steeling himself to move. Eld rips open a forbidden spell, unleashing mana corrosion on everything in its path, flooding the battlefield with a lethal, unstable aura that felt like it could snap reality in half. As he readies himself to take down the Ogre Emperor head-on, the forbidden spell, Mana Corrosion, finally bites down, gnawing through the ogre's mana from the inside out and making it twist and writhe in pure agony. Eld sits back and wrestles with the real reason this brutal curse almost never gets used, despite how terrifyingly powerful it is. That forbidden curse is a loaded gun, one wrong breath, and it lashes out at everyone standing nearby, sparing only the caster. And it can also smash monster drops, so people usually steer clear of it for good reason. Elda calls this the perfect move, gambling on survival first and leaving the rewards on the floor. The curse starts chewing through the ogre from the inside, shredding his body until it falls apart. Eld tells him the spell is the perfect antidote, right where the demon's poison would hit hardest. It doesn't just chew up mana, it gulps the tainted energy too, and that's what supercharges the monsters. The ogre's body gets ripped apart by the curse, disintegrating into nothing as it collapses. Eld's eyes snap into focus, and then, right in the middle of all that blazing chaos, he spots something he never saw coming. As the flames finally die down, Eld snaps into action, and suddenly the ogre, still barely standing, it fights through the worst of the damage, and charges straight at him with one final, desperate attack. The yogurt's body snaps, spits, and burns as it desperately fights to stay intact. Eld stepped forward with fearless confidence, no doubts, no backing down. He steels himself, then shouts that this battle is over before he delivers the final blow. Eld smashes the air with all his power, unleashing it at full force. Crack, splinter, his body tore apart in a violent burst, and the ogre crumpled to the ground under the crushing blow. Its strength finally gets shattered. Breathing hard, Eld drops his hand. Relief hit him the moment the fight finally ended. He surveys the wreckage, breathless with relief, because the battle is finally over and he won. As the flames finally fade, the battlefield goes still, and the ogres don't just fall, they vanish without a trace. Eld realizes the fight is over, even though he failed to get the Emperor's drops, yet after crushing so many ogres, including their leader, he's ready to march back to the capital and prove the crisis is finally done. In the chaos that follows, Eld stumbles on a rare stone, pure wisdom, like the universe just handed him a secret. Realizing the mana corrosion could have wiped those drops out for good, he counted himself lucky he managed to snag it. He lets out a breath of relief. There's one last thing left to deal with. Eld burst through the forest and slammed a detection spell into the air. The magic lights up, and right there lies a sinister artifact, the same thing fueling the demon's poison. Once he knows exactly where it is, he braces himself to face it head-on. Eld slams down a towering ice pillar, smashing it into the ground with brutal force. The frozen spike punches through and starts sealing off the demonic poison, stopping it cold from spreading any further. Eld declares the monsters will finally quiet down now that the poison is locked away. He can't stop wondering if the enemy has a way to automatically summon stronger ogres, but he clamps down on the thought and refuses to spiral. Realizing he doesn't know the rules of this game, he steels himself and vows to go back, because whatever this world hurls at him, he's ready to fight it head-on. At the guild branch, the manager falls asleep on the spot, even with the whole situation screaming for attention. The staff jolted him awake, furious that he'd slept while Eld was out there risking his life, but he just waved it off, claiming he'd only dozed off, totally clueless as their worry kept creeping higher. When morning finally breaks, Eld storms back into the guild out of nowhere, and everyone freezes in pure shock. He's wrecked from head to toe, but he's still smiling, exhausted yet somehow victorious. They all crowd in, firing worried questions as they ask if he's okay. And he straight up admits the fight didn't go down in the cleanest place. Eld leans in and reassures them, the danger's gone, then flashes a proud grin, proclaiming he wiped out every last ogre. Relief and pure joy crash through the guild, and they surge forward, grabbing him in a grateful, tight embrace. Bloodied and wrecked by the fight, Eld crumples to the ground and collapses hard. He blurts out an apology and admits he just needs a tiny break. Then the guild snaps into panic, screaming his name as he finally sinks into the rest he's been begging for. Eld jolts awake in a cozy bed inside a wooden room. Realizing he's been carted to safety, he blinks in confusion, glancing around and quietly asking, "Where am I?" Else then snaps awake at the inn only to realize he'd collapsed from sheer exhaustion right after taking down the ogres. A guild member bursts in, visibly relieved that he's finally awake, and tells him he's been out cold for 2 whole days. She hands him food, then promises she'll tip off the branch manager the moment it's over. Else gets thanked by the branch manager for taking down the ogres, but right before the talk can go any further, a shadowy stranger stepped forward and stared him down, asking straight to his face whether he'd taken the novice. Eld shoots the stranger a hard stare and demands to know who they really are.